Chapter 4781. Several monks were silent. For a moment, the net-faced monk raised his head again, looking at the situation in the sky vault, whispering, "There is only one way to do it at this moment." "Hurry up," Jianqing said anxiously. "With the help of our bodies, 9 of us followed Brother Airwheel and defeated the demon together." The monk Jingmian said in a deep voice. As soon as this remark came out, even Jianqing was silent. They helped each other. Even if they could not kill the female devil in the sand cave, they could certainly save the empty wheel. As for the 4 bitter words he said, he was also unable to hold up. For a moment, Jian gnashed his teeth. "Brothers, follow me to help Brother Airwheel." 9 Dao bodies, 9 Yenxian at this moment, straight up to the sky. Seeing this kind of scene, Cui Jing ran up to the heavenly sky even when he rushed. The majestic force of 9 together in total burst from behind the empty wheel and went straight ahead. Shan Yangyang, who was holding up her blood blade madly, realized that something was wrong, and when she reacted, the 9 in 1 united force, like an arrow, directly hit her. Boom! The tragic martyrdom exploded, completely engulfing Shan Yangyang's figure. "Old bald donkeys, you are extremely shameless." Cui Jing was furious, and the 8-foot stick in his hand moved forward regardless of disregard. Jianqing snorted loudly, and then smashed his palm. At this time, an iron hoop-like palm caught Jianqing's arm and stopped him. Afterwards, Cui Jing's Quan Sheng slammed into the left shoulder blade of the empty wheel. Under the realm of blood and energy, the strong dynamism that can almost fight against Yen Xian smashed the shoulders of the empty wheel into a piece. "Brother!" Jianqing shouted. "Leave me back." The empty wheel said calmly. There was no doubt in his words. Although Jianqing was impatient, he was afraid of his brother and had to retreat slowly. "Sure enough, it's a good plan, monk." The blasted smoke slowly dissipated, and a tall figure appeared slowly. An incomparably penetrating injury almost removed her right arm holding the knife, and heavy blood was slowly repairing the wound. After seeing this scene, the empty wheel directly stretched out the left palm and slammed on the right shoulder blade. Immediately, the blood of the dripped, and the bone of the Buddha with the halo was exposed. Jianqing and others frowned. "All back," the empty wheel said softly. Jianqing and others did not dare to stay and step back. "Now we are equal again," he said, and then he responded. Shan Yangyang did not say much. After the wound was completely repaired by the blood, the 2 continued to fight. The empty wheel was fighting, chanting Buddhist scriptures in his mouth, in order to contain the erosion of blood. A memorable move, shaking the sky. The empty wheel moves step by step, as if it is a steady mountain. Every shot is sinking like water, and the offense and defense are impeccable. And the sand lady who was holding the blood blade was already faintly faint. After all the hardships and robberies, Fong thought Mahayana, but in fact greed, all sufferings, and everlasting samsara. With the chanting of the scriptures, the air wheel became more and more energetic, and the treasure was solemn. "Monk, who do you think you are? You want to subdue me? Do you know how hard I am and how hard to drink? No one can bear it?" She gritted her teeth tightly and refused to face the pressure of the empty wheel. "Hugh said you wanted to save me on the 10th day, even if it was 1,000 years of catastrophe. It was delusional." The empty wheel opened his eyes and stared at her, saying, "If 10 days do not succeed, then 10,000 days will fail, and if 10,000 days fail, they will go through all kinds of calamities. How can there be no time to resolve all the causes and effects?" Shan Yangyang heard the words, and suddenly smiled. It was Sin Lung smiled. "Monk, you see me as your catastrophe, want to spend me to prove me, right? Are you worthy? You don't know the causes and consequences, only the persuasion of life. It's a big evil." The empty wheel's eyes were faint, but he said nothing. Shan Yangyang repeatedly asked, the narrow and long blood blade in his hand, and the falling knife was heavier than the one was imposed on you. Now you use other people's truths, arguments, and attempts to educate me on this. Is it feasible? Do you understand those truths yourself? What experience do you have to admonish me? Do you just rely on that point of reason in your chest? You said that even if people suffer all kinds of hardships and disasters, in the end, without exception, they all fall into greed. What about you? Did you just take it out directly? Do you think you can sing the truth out of the way? Can you stay out of the thing? You have spared no effort to save me. Isn't it to prove the truth, to prove yourself correct? If your purpose is achieved, isn't it falling into greed? A series of interrogations exploded in the mind of the empty wheel. He seemed to have an epiphany for a moment, but then it was chaos and confusion. All the questions are like maggots of the tarsal bones, which sprout from the bottom of my heart, and then grow and eat away uncontrollably. Self-confident, he began to question. Aren't all your truths right? If at the end of the day, you find yourself using your life to prove and protect the avenue, but it is just a dream, no root duckweed, what will the result be? Sha Niang's question began to magnify infinitely in the heart of the empty wheel, like an empty valley, all of which were echoed. A knife broke through the brilliance of his body, leaving a narrow knife mark on his body. Sha Nyang turned into a blood shadow and surrounded him unconsciously. All your persevering truths are lies. You are nothing more than a bead. You have been given spiritual wisdom by others, and you have borne a spiritual root. Everything is given to you by others. Qing Hui is faint, and the clear pupils of the empty will gradually enlarge. The streamer scriptures surging around him were also impregnated with blood. Blood gas is eroding, penetrating into the empty wheel's body bit by bit. Rather than being a believer in others, it is better to abandon those rules. You are not easy to give birth to wisdom. Do you follow in the endless years? Her voice was cold, and unconsciously, a little bit of temptation was released. The streamer rune is broken and broken. The empty wheel's gaze was hollow at a rate visible to the naked eye, and everything he understood in his consciousness was falling apart and trying to reconstruct it. At this moment, everyone noticed something was wrong. What did you do to Brother Airwheel? Jian Qingyuan opened his eyes and was completely angry. How could he not see that now the empty wheel has already spawned a heart demon, and his firm belief is only eroded by the few unreasonable distortions? No one thought of it at this time. The empty wheel that has been working hard to this day, the disciple of the twisted lamp given by the seat's deer, will come to such a situation. Chapter 4782. With a light and vigorous lotus leaf, he began to spread and bloom in the body of the empty wheel monk. Jianqing et al. No matter what else, if they directly urge their body, they have to step forward and give aid. But then they were shocked that they could not take a step forward, and there seemed to be some kind of transparent barrier that prevented them. Senior brother, you are waking up, all your thoughts are now bewitched by the female demon. Jian Qing hurriedly, while releasing great coercion, trying to break through the transparent barrier. But above the rainbow shadow lotus peak, all sounds were isolated. The empty wheel monk fell to his knees, his skinny chest throbbing violently. The blood blade in his hand dissipated, and Nyang Sha slowly lowered her head, looking at him softly. Hey, empty wheel, you lost. Demon, how can my brother lose? All of them are deceived by your evil law, and my brother gave birth to a heart demon. I will ask you to pay for your life. Jian Qing eyes are splitting, trying to break through. Layer barrier. The monk of the empty will began to swell a trace of blood gas, black and red blood gas. He seemed to be in agony, and his clear eyes began to be cloudy, and his yellow skin split into layers of gullies. Airwheel, you lost. Airwheel, you lost. He raised his head with difficulty, and Qingguang Fo was away from him. His eyes were blank. I lost. The world is sad, and 4 bitter words are established. The so-called 4 bitter words are the oaths of the previous empty wheel: death when seeing light, rot when seeing the wind, hurting when seeing the earth, and suffering from all things. And these 4 bitter words came into operation at the moment when the empty wheel confessed their defeat. The shape of the empty wheel changes at a speed that is visible to the naked eye, the flesh begins to rot, and the bones begin to deform. These 4 bitter words almost caused the empty wheel to push himself to a dead end. Even if he did not die, he would live like a monster in the barren years. I would like to ask, where can he stay after excluding the light, the wind, the earth, and all creatures? The Hongying Lotus Peak is collapsing, and the monk with the empty wheel is disappearing. At this moment, Shan Yangyang waved down a blood pool and drowned him. An iron chain protruded from the blood pool, and at the same time fixed his figure. Bizarre things happened. The irreversible dying empty wheel monk, after soaking in the blood pool, stopped his body and began to recover slowly. Everyone looked at this scene in disbelief. A generation of immortal monks actually coexist with the blood pool. Did you see that the current empty wheel can only survive in my blood pool? Shan Yangyang held up the blood pool with one hand and raised her eyebrows to overlook Jian Jing. Which, you are not dead with us. Jian Qing's eyes were red, and the restless force stirred the sky dome. She glanced coldly at Jian Qing. What if you never die? Since you dare to come, you must bear the corresponding price. You can of course level my Sand Devil Cave now, but you have thought about it. The empty will can only survive under the shelter of my blood pool. Once you start, I will let him die, and no one will be alive. Possible. The cold voice resounded between heaven and earth. 10 breath time, never retreat, the empty wheel will die. The countdown began, and the battlefield of the chaotic fighting began to calm down. Jian Qing's eyes were red, and he looked at the empty wheel brother who was sitting in the blood pool, and finally retreated. A deep glance at her, Jian Qing has since taken the rest of the younger brothers, and retreated from Shamo Cave. There was a whimpering gust of wind, perhaps because the force of the engagement was too great, which changed the world. The heavy rain began to fall, temporarily suppressing the murderous blood. At this moment, whether it was the evil repair of the Sand Devil Cave or the top repair of the sect, they stopped fighting. The one who had broken his arm and repaired the back of the sword of Xianfeng Daogu stopped on the spot with a sad face. A total of 8 cases, tens of thousands of world arrogance, almost a whole generation of great power died on the road to conquer the Sand Devil Cave, but in the end it was empty. Nothing at all. He was so disheartened that he looked at the real sword that had broken in his hand, and then stabbed it into his belly, self-determining the origin. Master! Hundreds of top repairers surrounded him, holding up his impending destruction. The heavens are unfair and protect the demons. After I die, under the heavens, no more sect can step into the Sand Demon Cave to avoid being slaughtered. In front of the Sand Demon Grotto, the old man of the immortal wind had ended his long life. Only less than 5,000 Zhongmen Dingxiu began to flee and move away. Cui Jing raised the stick and tried to rush to kill him, but was stopped by Shan Yangyang. She looked down on those leaving figures and finally said, "Retract troops. It can be regarded as an open battle between the heavens of this side." Starting from defeating the old people of the empty wheel, all the Zhongmen top repairs who came to the crusade finally retreated. Shan Yangyang raised the blood pool bound to the body of the empty wheel with one hand and returned to the Sand Devil's Cave. The surviving evil demons of Sand Devil's Cave began to clean the battlefield, like a bad wolf, devouring the spirit and flesh of the dead monk. Looking at the countless corpses on the ground, Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed a heavy flash, and he thought of the catastrophe of the divine universe. The two sides of the universe continue to live forever in the chaos era. Now, the divine universe has returned to peace, but similar scenes will never disappear, and it is the same in Dayanhuan. It's really ugly. The monks and birds are really soft goods. They obviously have 9 yenxian, but they can't take it here. Chen Qing shook his head and sighed. Chuanxiu sighed. They must have had a hard time. What a pain. If I were the monk, I would just push it all the way and hang to the city wall. None of the remaining debris could be run away, all slapped to death. Chen Qingdao said, in this way, it can be regarded as revenge for the monk, so much so as to drag the mud. The eyes of Qin Qing, who cast his eyes on appreciation in the Qing dynasty, seemed to very much agree with his approach. Jian Wushuang did not express his opinion. His eyes were watching the direction of Nyang Nyang. At this time, Di Qingqing spoke with interest, watching Jian Wushuang, Qin Qing, Chuanxiu. 3 people, you said, the 3 of you are very good, very appetizing for me. Qin Qing and Chuanxiu didn't speak, and they all looked at him with scrutiny. After all, he is the Jinwu next to Gongzi Mo, and his strength has reached a terrible level. He was alone, Against the two great Yanxian, this strength has exceeded the limit of everyone's imagination. Don't look at me with this kind of look, although I have helped Gongziamo, but it's just for help, but it doesn't matter at all. Di Qing and Yu Yu explained. Chapter 4783. Qin Qing and others are puzzled. Jian Wushuang will not naturally remove him from his son Mo because of his 3 or 2 sentences. You should know that in the previous northern celestial state, Di Qing also hit him hard. If it was not for the reason of immortality, I am afraid that he would never live to the present. Di Qing said again, now that he is dead, this seat naturally has nothing to do with him. Chen Qingpi smiled but didn't smile. After glancing at him, his arms rested on his head and said leisurely, we don't want to know what happened to you at all. After all, the death of Master Mo has nothing to do with us. I Chingwen said something meaningful on his face, did not speak again, and turned and ran back to Sand Demon Cave. His mother, you want to be old, you want to be younger. Chen Qing took a breath and quickly reached out and touched her face. The illusion on their faces has not disappeared, still the image of a middle-aged man with a beard. In this way, even if the later Qing Qing is reported to heaven, he doesn't know what the 3 of them really look like. The heroic woman gave the 3 of them a complicated look, and then her figure disappeared. Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a dignity, and the meaning of Qing Qing hit his enemies. He will definitely report it in the future. There are 2 urgent things at present. The first one is to restore your own strength as soon as possible to protect yourself, and the second one is to wipe out the causality and the killing. Jian Wushuang thought for a moment and said, you said, where will the empty wheel monk be held by her? Qin Qing heard the words and moved her heart. Brother Sword, do you want to find the monk to resolve the cause and effect on us? Yes, I had this plan. He nodded, but I want to find the empty wheel monk, I'm afraid it's more difficult. Chuanxiu suddenly said at this moment, Brother Jian, did you remember the sea of blood that we fell into not long ago? Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up, you mean she might imprison the empty wheel there? Chuanxiu nodded, it's very possible, after all, the empty wheel monk made a vow to die first, seeing light is dying, seeing the wind is rotting, seeing the ground is hurting, seeing all creatures suffers from the frustration of the sword, you think about it, if where will he be placed without letting him die? Jian Wushuang came to enlightenment, and the above bitter oaths were all harsh to the extreme, but placing the empty wheel monk under the unfathomable blood sea, could it just be avoided? The sea of blood is exactly where there is no light, no wind, no land, no creatures. Thinking of this, he stopped staying and prepared to explore. Chuanxiu pulled Jian Wushuang and shook his head. Now this node is not enough. On the one hand, our strength has not been restored. When we encounter an uncontrollable situation, we will be passive. I think the best time is to wait a few more years. Yes, Chuanxiu brothers, the analysis is so thoughtful, it seems that I am underestimating Qin Qing. Qin Qing patted his shoulder and gave a thumbs up. Chuanxiu smiled bitterly, I can't do much to help in the battle, so I want to help Jianxiong elsewhere. Jian Wushuang smiled and reached out and patted his shoulder, I'll leave you at that time. Since then, the 3 men of Jian Wushuang have lived in this sand demon cave, and Qing Qing and the heroic girl do not know where they are going. Earlier, Cui Jing sneaked over to monitor the 3 of them. Until Chen Qing carried the collar and flew for more than 10 miles, he never visited again. And the sand lady who created this sand cave in one hand, after the war, there was no news. The 3 of Jian Wushuang, still in the previous pavilion, were fully restored. 4 years passed away. At the beginning of the 5th year, Jian Wushuang took the lead in awakening from the enlightenment, a ray of vast and energetic golden awns circulating in the depths of his pupils, full of a general trend. But he also frowned and seemed extremely dissatisfied with his recovery. Chen Qing and Chun Qiu also woke up from the Wu sit, and their brows were also frowned. What's going on? I only recovered 40% of my strength? Chen Qing couldn't believe it. Chuanxiu clasped his palms tightly, and then let go. I only recovered 60% or less. I am 50%. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. 5 years have passed since the battle in the northern celestial state, and it should be enough to fully recover from the injury. But now the three of them, the best spring and autumn recovery is only 60%, there is still a long distance before full recovery. What's going on? Is it because of the reasons in this side of the sky, or the so-called causal reasons we are contaminated? Chen Qing asked. Jian Wushuang shook his head. It should not be the cause of contaminated cause and effect, it must be the reason of the heavy injury in Baiyin Xianzhou. After all, in that catastrophe, it was a blessing to survive. Chen Qing nodded, and it seems that there is only this explanation right now. 50% strength is enough for Jian Wushuang in this sand devil cave. Even if the situation is unfavorable, he also has 3 emperors beside him, even if he is the same as the sand goddess who is also in the immortal realm. There is a battle. Dim is the main color here in the entire sand cave area. Even if the sky dome has a lot of sunshine, it is just a flash, which undoubtedly makes the sword Wushuang more convenient. Stepping out of the pavilion, the 3 ghost-like figures soon disappeared into the darkness. With the memory of going for the first time, it was only half a day to go up in full force, and then came to the ancient lonely palace where the Sand Lady was. The wraith of the wraith can be heard for hundreds of miles, the sea of blood is silent, but the ripples are rippling from time to time. People are shocked. Jian Wushuang's eyes were calm, and then he asked the 2 of them, "You stay away from this place, and I dive into this sea of blood alone, remembering not to step into the blood sea anyway." No. The 2 of them refused in unison at the same time, and then they would dive into the sea of blood together. Jian Wushuang had no choice but to persuade him to stop the idea of the 2 going with him. "Brother Jian, we can't go down for the time being, but we will keep our hands here. Once there is any movement below, we will definitely continue to pick you up," Chuanxiu said in a deep voice, and then placed a ray of strength in his palm for contact. "Relax, it must be okay." Jian Wushuang nodded, then turned to face the boundless sea of blood and stepped into it in one step. The sea of blood boiled for a moment, and there were all kinds of ugly blood monsters blending together, all floating along the place where Jian Wushuang disappeared. Chen Qing and Chuanxiu looked at each other, and they both saw the color of worry in the other party's eyes. Chapter 4784. His body fell into the sea of blood. Jian Wushuang only felt countless, and the terrible palms filled with negative emotions were constantly pulling him and dragging him into the abyss. There is no buoyancy in this kind of blood sea, even a feather can never float on it. Jian Wushuang is like a million-gene stone statue, falling down. At the same time, there are countless ugly blood monsters who went on to follow his whereabouts and nibble past. The blood monsters in this blood sea are all made up of the dead monk's unaccounted souls. He has no autonomous consciousness, but only an insatiable ingestion of the soul of the gods. Jian Wushuang, who fell into the abyss of blood, naturally recognized this situation. In order to avoid the fierce fighting caused by the alertness of Shan Yangyang, he directly opened the stopper of a bottle of yang. Suddenly, the treasure light burst into bloom, and countless blood monsters were directly swallowed into the Bouyang bottle by the terrible suction. A moment later, the voice of the 3 emperors rang in the bowl of yang. "I'm going, what are these dirty things? Xiaoyu, what garbage did you bring in?" Sword had no embarrassment on both sides, so he spread his words with God's consciousness, and told the 3 emperors what had happened. It turns out that this is the case. Then our 3 emperors are responsible for the aftermath of the little friend. "Thank you, Jian will have some thanks in the future." "It's not necessary to thank you again, just take us to kill the old guy in Zhenliang." With the backing of the 3 emperors and the bowl of yang, the danger of having to spend some time on the hands and feet was solved. After the blood monster is no longer a problem, Jian Wushuang then controls his figure, looking for the trace of the empty wheel monk while avoiding those undercurrent winds. Just as he was preoccupied, a hill-like island quietly emerged above his head. Feeling that heavy sense of oppression, Jian Wushuang looked up subconsciously. At the next moment, a short arm like a giant pillar of celestial bodies stirred the sea of blood and fell down. He was startled, almost thinking, not thinking, directly condensed an invisible sword, and stabbed away. Each sword is like a slender willow leaf, all condensed into the form of a waterfall, swept up, and strangled straight to the shape of the huge island. Immediately afterwards, a deep wail like a whale fell, resounding under the blood sea. The whole blood sea abyss is like boiling water, restless, and instantly silent. After the sword intention released by Jian Wushuang completely dissipated, the terrible figure like an island was already fragmented. It was already inactive, and then it floated in the sea of blood like that, motionless. This giant turtle-like fish looks like it is made up of countless boulders and looks ugly. At the same time, its fragility is something that Jian Wushuang did not expect. Only 3,000 sword intentions beheaded, the weakness is evident. As Jian Wushuang was about to leave and continued his search, he faintly noticed that beside the island giant, there was a thick and long iron chain. He seemed to feel something and ascended directly to the giant. Then he really saw that a chain that was several times thicker than his waist was tied to the giant. As for the other end, it extends to the infinite darkness. Perhaps this chain is about where the empty wheel monk is. Jian Wushuang no longer looks like a headless fly, but follows this chain and walks towards the darkness. The more he walked in front of this extremely dark abyss, he saw hundreds and thousands of abandoned chains of various sizes floating under the abyss, the inexplicable mysterious ancient. Isn't here just trapping the empty wheel monk alone? Jian Wushuang was puzzled in his heart, while his figure continued to move forward. The time to move forward and fall seems to be endless. The blood is so deep that he has the illusion of no bottom. At the same time, the chains under his feet began to become thinner, from the original 2 men's thickness to the current thighs, which may be a symptom. Under this extremely dark abyss, the situation is very bad. Even with the strength of Wushuang, he can barely see the situation of more than 1,000 meters in front of him, which makes him more vigilant. I don't know how long it passed. When there was a faint light, which could not be seen if you didn't look closely, and printed in Jian Wushuang's eyes, his heart beat unintentionally. Jian Wushuang hurriedly stared at it, and saw a pile of decayed bones, a skin that was as thin as a skeleton, but as tough as an old tree appeared. He sat like that, his limbs, waist, and neck were entangled with 6 muddy black chains, while enduring the encroachment of countless tiny blood monsters. Sword Wushuang saw this, and a chill appeared in his eyes, and he had to wave his hands to disperse those blood monsters. But at this time, the 5 giants like islands seemed to smell the breath of his body and swam from the sea of blood in all directions. The 5 island giants correspond to 5 strong chains. Jian Wushuang no longer cared about the others, directly led the sword, and under this blood abyss, he released his dazzling style. Wushuang Kendo, Xingahai Jiani, the second type. River. The cohesion of 100,000 swordsmanship is a form that cannot be imagined or faced directly. Like the Tianhe sweeping, with a vigorous momentum, rush forward. The pitiful 5 island giants, when they had time to open up the blood abyss and swallow it, they were strangled into pieces by the horrible sword. At the same time, the chain shattered, turned into a piece of iron scraps, and scattered. In the midst of meditation, the thin, skeleton-like figure slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were no longer clear, completely replaced by deep black. And this slim figure is the empty will monk who was tempted out of the demon and imprisoned in the blood pool. Good. He opened his lips and said the word old. A question sounded, "Master, can you see me?" The empty will monk slowly shook his head. My dirty eyes can't look directly at the good man, but the ear can feel the good man. At the moment, Jian Wushuang concealed his body in order to avoid the empty wheel monk and suffer the frustration of seeing all creatures. I don't know what the good men came here, what happened to see the muddy monk? The air will set again. When it came to his mouth, he didn't know how to speak. That, I don't know the fairy master, but I knew how to remove the cause and effect of unexplained contamination. After a moment of silence, the empty will said, "Good man, how can there be no cause and effect in this world? In the midst of all things, there are actually a fixed number of things, when and how they appear, it is actually destined, even if you think it is unreasonably contaminated, it already has because." Chapter 4785. Sword Wushuang, who disappeared under the blood abyss, froze after hearing the truth of the empty wheel monk. The cause and effect that he contaminated was originally contaminated for no reason, and there was no cause at all. Why did the empty will be cut off in a breath? There is no cause and effect for all the world? This is arbitrarily arbitrary. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang looked at that end and sat on the countless dead bones, his eyes empty. Isn't he completely eroded by the devil? Is the good man still there? Asked the empty wheel monk. He slowly folded his hands, facing the direction of Jian Wushuang, and gave a gift. I have given birth to a demon, and I can no longer educate and discipline all beings, like a good man. If you don't dislike it, we will just chat. Jian Wushuang is not sure whether his state of mind has changed, but with the addition of cause and effect and mass murder, he can only talk with the empty wheel with a try attitude. He said, Master, I don't agree with you. How can there be no cause and effect for all things? If there is no cause and effect for no reason, is everything in this world necessarily connected? I don't think so. If I said that I would save the next monk when I was in the sky, for him, I was his cause and effect. For me, wasn't there any cause and effect? This is just my whim. Kongluan heard the words and smiled slightly. Senior man, in fact, when you say this sentence, you have already involved the cause and effect. It is precisely because of the cause of your whim that you have created the aftermath. The reason is that in this cause and effect that shouldn't exist, you dominate and create the cause with one hand. Everything is so big, all the causality about itself. In fact, dominance is not always in your own hands. After saying this, the empty will stop talking and folded his hands. He can grow up to the top of the road step by step, and he has a terrifying perception of heaven and earth avenue, all kinds of methods. How can he not understand the meaning of his words? Jian Wushuang realized a little bit. He asked, Fairy Master, do you mean that everyone's own causal dominance has not always been in his own hands? Is it connected with all creatures? It is so, but it is not. At this time, the empty will said an ambiguous answer, but he did not answer it. Everything is in the heart of the good man, in his hands, waiting for you to change. Jian Wushuang didn't speak. He was sorting out the connections. If it was really like the empty will monk said, the cause and effect he had contaminated since he entered this sand devil cave. In fact, the dominant power has always been in the hands of the so-called sand lady. It was her, forcing Jian Wushuang to be contaminated with these causes and effects, thus carrying the massacre. You don't provoke cause and effect, but cause and effect take the initiative to provoke. He sighed helplessly. Jian Wushuang seemed to be a little unwilling. After being silent for a moment, he told the cause and consequence of the whole thing to Empty Wheel. At the end, the Empty Wheel folded his hands together. Good man, this is both your cause and effect and your disaster. I don't want to hide it. I came here this time to seek a solution. Jian Wushuang said slowly, Xianshi, what can you know? The Empty Wheel monk said, everything is in the heart of the good man. In his hands, waiting for you to change. The external force is only external force after all. Jian Wushuang is very depressed, and I don't know how to speak again. In this theory of cause and effect, the meaning of the empty wheel monk is extremely obvious, and only he can change it. The following time, the two of them talked about the block for a few days before they finally ended. Jian Wushuang only felt that most of the doubts in his mind had been eliminated, and at the same time he had even more admiration for the empty wheel. Even if he had already given birth to a demon, he could still hold on to his heart and not let the resentment eat away. Under this extremely dark blood sea abyss, he solemnly returned to the empty wheel monk with his hands folded. His bona mind, unique insights into everything, and the fearless spirit are enough to make Jian Wushuang treat him with courtesy. The empty will finally concluded, saying, Good man, just a few days together. The old decay also felt the enlightenment, never felt comfortable at this moment. The feeling you gave me is that everything comes out of the dust, but it is not independent of the outside. It's like being born with a certain sense of truth, like a fright. Fairy Master praised it. Jianmo has been doing it for thousands of years, but it has only been ups and downs without stopping. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. The empty will looked up and asked, Are you tired? He was startled and did not expect such a question. For a long while, Jian Wushuang shook his head. I don't know. It's an old question. Kazuka's eyebrows stretched, and then he slowly raised his palm and took one of the most massive, luminous black beads out of the string of 14 beads between his necks. Ring beads. Senior man, I know I can't enter reincarnation in this life, and now I will give this ring to you, and it is still a thought. This ring of beads is my source. All my thoughts, and feelings in my first half of my life have been sealed here. I hope that I can provide good help to the good men in the future. The old will be an honor. Jian Wushuang heard the words and directly and solemnly refused, and then he had to take the empty wheel out of the sea of blood. The empty wheel smiled and shook his head. This world is in prison. Only painting the ground is the real prison. My heart and Tao have been tempted by the magic barrier. If I have no face to see the past, this will be my final destination. It was a great conversation with the good men, and at the end, I hope to see each other. But Jian Wushuang said a little, and calm is the reason why he hides his body because of the 4 bitter words made by the empty wheel monk, the last of which is that seeing the soul must suffer from the knife. It's okay, even if it's the last time you see a good man and sit down, it's worth it. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang no longer refused to say anything. His original figure slowly emerged, and thousands of huamongs surging around him, like him against the sky. The black eyes of the empty wheel cleared for a moment, then he nodded his head and sent the original ring in his hand to Jian Wushuang. Seeing the wise men today, let the old remembrance remember all the hard work of the beginning, and it is awe-inspiring. I used to be a fruit on a carefree tree that was about to die. I shouldn't have been born with wisdom, but there was a bluebird who used great perseverance to draw water every day. Took me off the tree and headed to the Buddha to listen to Taoism and sit for countless years only gave me spiritual wisdom and Taoism. The situation now is also ashamed of the bluebird's pity, old and decayed, only to fall into extreme darkness and endure cold, in order to atone for sin. Chapter 4786. The empty wheel raised his head and looked at the unknown darkness, a rare sad flash on his face. Walking through thousands of waters and reading countless heavens, I found that everything is not false. He lowered his head and sat down like a stone statue. Rubbing the palm of his hand, the ring-shaped bead glowing with black color, Jian Wushuang sighed silently and slowly backed away. As the empty wheel said, the most difficult thing to get out of this world is actually your own prison. He did not insist any longer, and finally looked at the empty wheel monk sitting at the bottom of the blood sea abyss, and his figure disappeared. This causal discussion lasted for nearly 7 days. All doubts and empty wheels were reported one by one. Jian Wushuang himself also knew that he wanted to break his own cause and effect. What should he do? To break one's own cause and effect, one must first find the cause. And this cause is definitely the creator of the Sand Devil's Cave, the so-called Sand Lady. This kind of so-called cause and effect is originally an illusory thing. Once contaminated, it will be extremely tricky. And Jian Wushuang also made up his mind that before his strength is completely restored, if there is no effective method, he will directly erase here. Constantly breaking open the blood and floating on the sea, but at this moment, he faintly heard a faint cry in his ears. There are 2 shouts. If you don't listen carefully, you will never hear them. Soon Jian Wushuang locked the place where the sound was made and hurried away without stopping. After traveling for more than 1,000 miles, finally in this sea, I saw 2 figures fighting against countless blood monsters. Upon seeing this, he directly released the force of great momentum and overwhelmed him. Countless blood monsters were directly squeezed into powder, and the 2 figures were obviously relieved. How did you come down? Didn't I let you wait on it? Jian Wushuang's body swept, helplessly said. Those 2 figures are Chen Qing and Chuanqiu. When he saw Jian Wushuang, he was overjoyed. Chen Qing waved to disperse the body of the dead blood monster, and then said, "Brother Sword, you are here by yourself. How can we rest assured that after hearing another abnormal sound underneath, we can't stand it anymore?" Decided. Brother Jian, are you in any danger? Chuanqiu looked around with vigilance. Jian Wushuang shook his head gently, looking at the moment he didn't care about himself, and resolutely descended into the blood sea to search for his two people. This kind of touch is an emotion that can only be felt when you are with the Nine Tribulation King. It is the kind of feeling that can rest assuredly fight against each other and entrust everything to the other party. Then he raised his palms on the shoulders of the two and smiled. Why is there any danger? Let's leave now. The three laughed at the same time and then left the sea of blood together. By the sword, brothers, did you find the empty wheel monk? I found it. We have been here for a few days, and we also know some ways to eliminate the cause and effect of the body. That's good, but I wanted to leave this bird's place a long time ago. A bunch of debris that made a living from food made this place sullen. Brother Sword, you said that we should wipe this place before we leave. Apart from? Walking out of the blood sea, Qin Qing and others all breathed out a breath. After all, this blood sea is completely formed by the grievances of countless monks, and they still have a certain sense of oppression for them who have not fully recovered. At this moment, suddenly more than a dozen figures suddenly emerged from the quartet. It was Cui Jing who was led by a disheveled shirt with a mixed look. He lifted the loose waistband and said with a lip, I said, where did you sneak up and go? Where did you come from here? What's wrong? Is there any treasure under this sea? I think your grandson's mouth is still chopping. Qin Qing said coldly, and stepped forward to raise his hand to pump. Hey, I warn you not to mess up. Cui Jing looked nervous and stepped back unconsciously. At this moment, a cold female voice quietly resounded. Cui Jing, step back. Jian Wushuang turned around and saw that in front of the ancient palace of Great Silence, she was wearing a blood-red cloak and walked towards them slowly. Cui Jing stopped talking and finally said nothing and took the crowd to retreat. What about the sword brothers, fight now? Qin Qing asked in a low voice. Jian Wushuang calmly said, no hurry, let's see what she sells first. An unpredictable yen xian is still a deterrent to him who is still in recovery. Condensed like real blood, swimming around her like a horse, terrifying. How much Ding Xiu has to be killed to condense such a terrible blood, which can be seen? After she came to the trio, her eyes locked on Jian Wushuang for the first time. You are the eldest brother of the two of them? Shan Yangyang asked. Jian Wushuang did not answer, but looked at her coldly. She ignored Jian Wushuang's gaze at all, and then said to herself, let me go, those things that are contaminated on you, maybe I can have a solution for you. After she finished speaking, she turned and walked on the black stone avenue suspended in the blood sea. Brother Sword, you can't go, the lady must have no good intentions, maybe you have to start with us. Qin Qingning said, even if we want to go, we will accompany you. It's okay, even if I didn't recover, she couldn't help me halfway. If she had a bad heart, then I would pick her head first. Jian Wushuang looked forward and narrowed her eyes. Under the dim sky filled with blood, only two figures were moving forward. The black stone boardwalk suspended in the blood sea extends to the farthest distance, without end. I am Sha Qing, is the master who created this sand cave. Sand Nyang from the newspaper door slowly raised his palm. As you can see, all the resentment and blood here, I did it all by myself. Jian Wushuang said leisurely, you are so deep in the killing industry that you are not afraid of the way you are. You will also die in this way one day? So what? If I said I had been waiting for that day? Sha Qing's eyes were calm, and it didn't look like she was talking. Jian Wushuang obviously didn't care whether she lied or not, and said softly, let's talk, why should we plant this cause and effect on a few of me? She heard the words, and the corners of her lips quietly evoked a touch of arc. Great. It really is the person I am looking for. Presumably you discovered it the first time? Jian Wushuang did not follow her words. Tell me how to release, otherwise you know the consequences, and I will let you and this whole sand devil cave be destroyed. Sha Qing raised her eyebrows and said, what a big tone. Why do you think that the three of you can destroy this whole sand demon cave? If I were to devour you now, what chance would you have to escape? Chapter 4787. Jian Wushuang's face was suddenly somber, and the unimaginable terrifying force suddenly rushed out. The beam of Yanli beamed straight into the sky dome and shattered the blood. He stood on the spot, like a supreme emperor, so that he could not look directly. Hua Mang emerged in his eyebrows, condensing a 7 galaxy. 2 golden awns that made Yen Xian tremble from the depths of his pupils. Do you want to give it a try? Seeing this scene, Sha Qing's eyes also dignified. She didn't expect this guy who looked in a weak state to be able to release such a terrible trend. After a while, Sha Qing smiled again. I don't want to try. I'm looking for you, but I'm not looking for you to fight, but to discuss some things. Jian Wushuang scattered around the terrible dynamism of the whole body, the situation where the sword had been drawn like it had never happened before. The cause and effect on you, as you thought, was deliberately drawn to you. Sha Qing didn't hide it at all. The reason why I did this was purely because I wanted to go to a place to do it for me. One thing. What if I don't go? Jian Wushuang's voice was cold, and she had no sympathy for her. You can't go because once you don't go, then the cause and effect of your body can never be relieved. Sha Qing is like eating him, and that place is not a vicious place, but a great place for a hideaway. And I let you do something for me, but it is simply to send something which is not harmful to you. Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. If the place you are going to is a paradise, as you said, why don't you go? Sha Qingdao said, do you think that if I look like this now, if I can go there, do I still have to spend a lot of money? And the cause and effect on you can only be relieved by going there. You just planted unknown cause and effect on me for this? Jian Wushuang's voice was cold, and he could not control it. He wanted to kill Sha Qing. Do you know that this has an impact on me? How big? There was a trace of apology on Sha Qing's face. Sorry, I can only do that, but you can rest assured that as long as you go to that place, all the cause and effect on you will be eliminated. Although it was somewhat unacceptable, Jian Wushuang resisted the urge to kill her on the spot. After all, compared with killing her, how to solve the cause and effect is the top priority. That place is actually very far away, and the distance has far exceeded the distance between one side and the other side. Speaking of which, she paused and looked at Jian Wushuangdo. With your realm of immortality, I must have learned that we are in the domain of the Great Division and are under the jurisdiction of the heavenly court of the Emperor Zhen Wuyang. This time, instead, it was his turn to be surprised. He did not expect that there would be such a Yenxian in this almost remote part of the heavens, who could clearly be under the jurisdiction of Desiyu and Zhenwuyang Emperor. Sha Qing said, and the place I want to ask you to go to is actually an infinite heaven with the same size as Daiji. Although Jian Wushuang's complexion didn't fluctuate, his heart was already rippling. He has entered the great Dayanhuan of this avenue. So far he has only wandered in this big domain, and now from the mouth of others, he heard another sky domain of the same size as the big domain. He clearly felt that the vast expanse of heavens, the researches built by the heavens of all sides, spread like a picture scroll, slowly unfolding. Sha Qing said slowly, all the monks who came to attack the Sand Devil's cave and the empty wheel monk imprisoned in the Blood Sea came from that place. The meaning in this sentence was obviously beyond the expectation of Jian Wushuang. He did not expect that the empty wheel, and the 9 monks around him, did not belong to Desiyu, but came from another place. The place that can resist the Oasis Chamber, I call it the Heavenly Buddha Realm. Speaking of this, Sha Qing looked at him and stopped talking. Tong Tian Buddha Realm. Jian Wushuang repeated it in the bottom of his heart, and at the same time, he has built a big heaven in the bottom of the heart. There is no fighting, and some only listen to Taoism. Sha Qing said, so I said, you will definitely not be hurt when you go there, and the cause and effect on you will also be relieved. Jian Wushuang then said coldly, why do I believe you? Do you just rely on your few words? You can't believe me, she shrugged. But the empty wheel is the monk who walked out from there. I think you can speculate on the heavenly Buddha world from his nature. He sneered, don't you think I have any other way than this path to relieve the cause and effect of my body? Sha Qing heard some doubts in her eyes, but she quickly calmed down. Even if you have other ways to touch the cause and effect of your body, but only to go to the path of heaven and Buddha world is the most secure way. Squeezing the killing intention of his heart, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, I am a little curious like the brutal, murderous female demons like you. You actually have something to send to the so-called heavenly Buddha realm. Is it your own? Was the head delivered? Sha Qing said with a smile, as for something, I want to wait until your strength is fully restored before I entrust it to you. This deep-minded and spicy female demon has been listed as a must-kill in Jian Wushuang's heart. Regardless of whether the cause and effect on his body can be relieved, he has made up his mind that when his strength is completely restored, he will directly kill him. Sha Qing obviously will not know that she has been regarded as a must-have target by Jian Wushuang. What she is doing now is to tell him everything she knows about the heavenly Buddha world. At this moment, the sky suddenly burst into empty sounds. Sister, no good, something big happened. Cui Jing's panic voice resounded on the sky dome, and then his figure appeared in front of the two. Sha Qing's face was unpleasant, and she was about to scold Cui Jing when she retreated. Her eyes caught a shocking wound on his chest. The wound is like a blunt instrument hit, leaving a wound. Although Cui Jing is only an ancestor-level top repair realm, with the blessing of the blood and gas field in this sand devil cave, even Yanxian in general cannot cause him such heavy damage. At the moment, he was almost killed for half his life. What's wrong? Tell me in detail. Sha Qing knew that something was going on, and her eyebrows tightened. Chapter 4788. After glancing at Jian Wushuang, Cui Jing took a deep breath and said, Those bald donkeys are back again. Actually dare to come. Sha Qing's eyes looked bright. This time, I let them all become nourishment for me to learn the sea. Cui Jing shook his head. He covered the wound on his chest with his hands, and it seemed extremely painful. No, big sister, this time, you must run away. Sha Qing heard what he said was wrong. Why? Sister, the bald donkeys left before, and now they come back with them, and there are two different big monks. The two big monks are not afraid to create a killing industry. Kill our thousands of brothers. Cui Jing's face was pale. We can't stop it, I just came back to spread the news to you, let you leave quickly, how far you go. Sha Qing's eyes became more dignified when she heard the news. After a moment, she looked at Cui Jing Dao. Let all the sand demon caves be repaired, and all will follow me to the city to fight. Cui Jing shook his head firmly. No, this time, you listen to me, elder sister, let me go as far as you can. However, Sha Qing would not listen to him, just reached out and patted his head, and then said in a deep voice, The old lady said to gather, less to me to use those that are useless. If the sand demon cave is over, no one will end well, it is better to let go fight. After she finished speaking, she turned to look at Jian Wushuang. If I can give it to you alive, if I die, then it's another matter. At the end of the conversation, she picked up Cui Jing directly, soared forward, and soon disappeared. In this endless sea, only Jian Shuangshuang was left. At this moment, he looked forward calmly, and in the midst of meditation, he had a hunch that this time, Sha Qing should not be alive. Then Chen Qing and Chun Qiu flew over. Brother Sword, look at that direction. Chen Qing pointed to the distance with his hand. Jian Wushuang looked around and saw that in the far distance, the sky surrounding the whole sand demon cave began to break. There are countless strands of radiant golden awns breaking through the blood, shining and rising. The kind of golden mansions, while giving people sacred incomparableness, and with a sense of killing that cannot be ignored, made the observations self-defeating. His brows were slightly frowned, because it was possible to form the golden power, which could never be controlled by Yanxian. It's really weird. When did so many great Yanxian come out in this whole big domain? Is it that I am ignorant? Chen Qing's perception of Yan Li was also extremely keen. At the first time, he noticed that the golden blood of such a broken blood can only be released by Dian Immortal. Is it really Dian Immortal? Jian Wushuang's heart was moving. If it were a monk and Dian Immortal, it is very likely that he came here from the so-called heavenly Buddha realm. This time, it seems that the lady has no way to live with the whole debris of the sand demon cave. Chen Qing sighed. If Dingxiu can still use quantity to threaten the existence of Yanxian, then for Dianxian, it is no different from death. With a wave of hand, killing Yanxian, and destroying Wanwan Dingxiu are all in one breath. If it is said that Dingxiu is under the existence of Heavenly Path Ultimate Qiyun, Yanxian can control the existence of Heavenly Path Ultimate Qiyun. So Dian Immortal is to build the existence of Great Luck. This is the distance between the realms. If it is said that the promotion of Yanxian from the top repair, hundreds of super heavens do not necessarily have one person, then the Great Yanxian, there are 10,000, even 100,000 heavens, there can be no one. This is no longer the concept of 2 lives in a lifetime, it is just a path opened up from scratch. Even if it is like Qin Qing, I do not know how many years have been trapped in the peak of Yanxian, and there is no possibility of promotion to Dianxian. It is for this reason that Qin Qing felt incredible when he saw 2 Dian Immortals coming to attack the Sand Demon Cave. They could completely destroy the entire heaven with one finger. Why bother? This girl is dead. It can be regarded as an explanation to our brother. Qin Qing looked at Jian Wushuang, smiled. Let's go, let's wait and see. Jian Wushuang said, and then flew towards the head of the Sand Demon Cave immediately. The blood is breaking, and the blameless soul is wailing and dissipating. The whole Sand Demon Cave began to collapse. The 3 of them climbed up the broken city wall and looked at it. The magnificent golden mansions were like a big day that could not be looked directly at. They hung high in the air and destroyed all the dirty blood. Oh, it's really Dian Immortal. Qin Qing murmured in shock. I saw that in front of the wall of the Sand Devil Cave, there were only 11 bodies, standing in a zigzag shape above the sky dome. 9 monks headed by Jian Qing were at the end. At their forefront, 2 monks carrying a big sun wheel, naked with their upper bodies, like the angry eyes of King Kong, the big mans burst out of their eyes, full of supreme prestige. The unmatched and vast golden mansions flowed from both of them, with an unimaginable trend. Those evil demons who have been eroded by their blood and are in a state of enthusiasm all day long are not afraid of death at all. Even if those golden awns can kill them in an instant, they will not be afraid of death. In their eyes, they abandon the death, and only the vast infinite energy of energy in their eyes. Sand Devil Cave infiltrated nearly 50,000 ancestor-level repairs with nourishment of blood, and was fully dispatched at this moment, covering the sky like a locust. But under the shining of the golden mansions, all the front ones exploded and died, and none of them could break through the barrier. This scene is extremely shocking. The blood gas sky is broken, and the wind rips the heavens and landed on every inch of the earth. Facing such a terrible situation, a tall cloak covered in blood and red, but resolutely moving forward. Sister, can't you? Cui Jing, holding an 8-foot stick, wanted to step forward to help her, but was trapped by Sha Qing with a chain of force and threw it over the city wall. Standing in the air, her cold eyes looked forward without any fear. The 2 monks headed by the big sun will also looked at her. Where is the empty wheel? The 2 of them spoke at the same time, and Wei's voice resounded. Sha Qing smiled coldly, the empty wheel has been lost in my hands. Whether he is a life or a death, it is up to me to decide how he comes and goes, and how is it related to you. It's purely a move to find death. Hand over the empty wheel. I'm reluctant to let you step into the reincarnation, otherwise you will definitely die. A monk on the left is tall and has a bearded beard like the empty wheel. Out loud, on his bare chest, there were red flowing clouds and water lines flowing. Chapter 4789. The indescribable horror wind swept through. Immediately afterwards, the monk Jian Qing said with a deep voice, Sister Kong Tong, Brother Silence, don't tell her more, just destroy this place, and you can certainly find Brother Kongluan. Called Kong Tong, the silent 2 did not speak, apparently waiting for Sha Qing's reply. There was only sarcasm left in her eyes. I said, the empty will was lost in my hands, and his life and death were in my hands. Do you think that you can save him by destroying this Sand Devil Cave? Ridiculous. Since you are so obsessed, then use your life to atone for it. The 2 monks folded their hands together at the same time and said in a deep voice. Suddenly, the Qinghui Buddha's light pierced the sky, and all projected towards this land of evil thoughts. All the evil cultivations that are in a madness and madness are bursting into shape, turning into a plume of blood and disappearing. Jian Wushuang looked real. Almost when the indifferent Buddha light was coming down, he directly released the majestic force and turned it into a barrier to block the heads of the three people. Cui Jing has been so scared that he has no chance of survival under this kind of Buddha's light. Then he saw the three men of Jian Wushuang who were not far away. When he twisted his body, he rolled forward. "Three heroes, help me!" Cui Jing hysterically said. "This kid is really dead." Chen Qing was surprised. Jian Wushuang did not squint, but stretched out his hand to lead Cui Jing. Cui Jing, who is not a stingy face, is definitely not a good person. Although he has no good feelings, he still offers a helping hand. Because Cui Jing didn't make things difficult for them in the past few years, and has always been in peace. Thank you, thank you." He nodded to Jian Wushuang, and then breathed out. The indifferent attacking Buddha light then descended, and everything in Sand Devil's cave was directly destroyed. The disordered walled city, the high wall, and the earth covered with sand and stone were all turned into powder. Buzz! Buzz! Buddha light swept the enchantment above his head. Jian Wushuang snorted, and then a ray of divine blood dripped from his nose. Chen Qingqiu and the two saw this and hurriedly released Yen Li together, which completely stabilized the boundary. "This bunch of godly bald donkeys, this is going to be slaughtered." Chen Qing's face was flushed. He has not fully recovered, obviously also a bit difficult. Wiping away the blood of God, Jian Wushuang's solemn gaze looked at the broken sky. Under the Buddha's light, Sha Qing kept shining, and let the Buddha's light shine on her and penetrate the holes. She is looking for death. This happened, even Jian Qing and others who hated her were stunned. She carried her hands on her back. She did not resist at all, even with a hint of decomposition. When the light of Buddha coming to the earth dissipated, the entire Sand Devil cave was destroyed and collapsed. The 11 monks such as Kong Tong and Kongji all stared at the crumbling figure. The blood-colored cloak shattered with the wind, and Sha Qing's figure was almost intact, and the inexhaustible blood flowed from her. Please tell me, where is my empty will brother now?" Jian Qing Shin snorted. The pupils that had been gradually collapsing together again, Sha Qing looked at him, then slowly turned around and went to the ground shakily. "Enough courage!" Jian Qing sipped, raising her hand to smash her figure. "Jian Qing." There was no silence to speak, looking at him warning. The monk Jianqing took a step back and took back his palm, but his eyes were still intact. In the same air and silence, the two did not shoot again, folded their hands together, and looked straight ahead. There was blood of God on the enchantment, and Sha Qing, who was broken in shape, fell directly on the broken ground. Cui Jing gritted his teeth and his eyes were red. "Sister, why don't you leave?" She was already the end of the crossbow, and then looked at Jian Wushuang. "Hey, I'm going to die," she said, without even realizing her death. She even raised her eyebrows. Then, with her broken palm, she shivered and reached into her arms to take out a thing, and suddenly threw it directly at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang didn't intend to reach out, but in the end he couldn't bear it, but still stretched out his palm to catch the thing. With a restrained blood, it was a crystal skull the size of a palm. "This thing doesn't reach the heavenly Buddha realm. Don't give it to anyone. As a compensation to you, I will give you all my insights." Sha Qing has already been unstable, but she still got up, toward Jian Wushuang. With a crisis in my heart, Jian Wushuang's eyes glanced at the monks on the broken sky, and then said quietly, "If you want me to leave alive, start now. Don't come close to me, let alone your feelings. Give me." Sha Qing heard it, stunned for a moment, and then smiled indifferently. "Yes, you are a supreme being, how can you see my feelings?" Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, and some didn't understand what she meant. "Let's go, I'll finally open the way for you." Her eyes gradually recovered, like burning the fairy source. Jian Wushuang did not stay any longer, immediately turned around and was ready to leave. "No, I won't go, sister, and I will stay with you." Cui Jing shook his head desperately, but because of the chains on his body, he had restricted his movements. "Don't follow me. The sky will be far away, and you won't see each other again. Sha Qing turned around and said coldly, "Adult, if you really don't want to go to the heavenly Buddha realm, please send me the thing you trust to Cui Jing and let him go." After this last sentence was spoken, her broken body stared for a moment, and countless strands of dignified blood blew out of her body, covering the sky and the sun. Jian Wushuang's body paused before moving on. "Let me go, I won't go." Cui Jing twisted his figure hard. Jian Wushuang directly smashed it with a palm knife. Chen Qing and Chuanqiu also knew that the situation was urgent. Immediately carrying Cui Jing, flew out. Where does the rest go? The empty monk, the two monks in the air, made trouble at the same time and punished them. The indescribable power of great terror is like the Tianhe, falling down, and it is about to hang out the sword and other people directly. "Hey, monk, you are so indiscriminate, so you have created a killing karma. How is it different from me?" In the boundless blood mist, Sha Qing's figure exuded a strange and crimson red. Jian Qing's eyes narrowed. "Bad brother, she will break the fairy source." As the voice fell, the dark sky was completely torn apart, and a huge amount of blood gas swallowed everything up and shattered it. A broken immortal source of Yanxian was the final blow, enough to destroy and smash all the heavens. And this is also the first time Jian Wushuang has seen Yanxian's broken fairy source after he entered Dianhuan. The horror energy generated almost swept them into it. Chapter 4790. The immense energy of broken Xianyuan suddenly helped them, helping Jian Wushuang and others to leap hundreds of millions of miles in one step. This vast expanse of heaven was also destroyed by more than half of this blow. The nihilistic wind raged, but this boundless blood only existed for a moment, and was then dispelled by the Buddha. Simultaneously, empty and empty waved at the same time, directly erasing residual energy. Sha Qing desperately shattered the immortal source, but it was simply impossible to shake their Buddha's light. Since then, the entire sand demon cave, along with more than half of the heavens, have completely disappeared. Only a sea of blood that is strange to the extreme has not disappeared, floating in the void, without borders. Senior brother, the few remaining evils must have been the last details of Sand Devil's cave, and they must not be allowed to escape. Jian Qing said urgently. Kong Tung, silence stands in place, hands folded, and then slowly take a step. One step shrinks the mountains and rivers, billions of miles can be flat. A step of hundreds of millions of miles, but just a few steps, caught up with the few people who ran away. Jian Wushuang's mind suddenly sank, and now they knew they could not escape. Sure enough, an uncontestable, unimaginable Buddha-like prisoner cage was then pressed down and trapped in it. Air waited to create countless killings, only redeemed with death. What else to run? Kong Tongwai's voice resounded. Jian Wushuang didn't like his indiscriminate style. Even if he said loudly, "How do you think I have created countless killings? Is it just because we have spent several years in Sand Devil's cave?" Kong Tong snorted coldly. Since walking with Sand Devil Grotto, it must be a group of gangs. How can I not determine that you are waiting for the killing karma?" He frowned, apparently shocked by the empty argument. Chen Qing obviously wanted to spit him. I said bald. "Monk, are you confused in your head? Even if we are part of the Sand Devil's cave, but it was only the lady who caught the empty will monk, and now you are in your hands. What does it have to do with us? There have been more killings in this world. Didn't you just kill monks just now? Everything should be reasonable. Don't live with us a few people, because we really have a half-cent relationship with Nasha. Nothing. Regardless of whether it matters, you all stay today." Kong Tong apparently didn't want to talk nonsense. His eyes were cold, as if he had controlled the killing of them. Chen Qing looked iron green. "Damn old bald donkey, it seems that we are the one to eat." Jian Wushuang did not speak. His palm was already touching the bowl of yang bottle. With the real shadow of the three emperors, even if he was facing Dianxian, he was confident that even if he was invincible, he could retreat. The air was cold in the eyes of the air, and the palm of one party carrying the force of terror had already been bombarded. At the same time that Jian Wushuang had pulled the cork off, it seemed that the chaos had been torn apart, and the cries of awakening from the ancient times rang through the heavens. Tawoliyuan, driving the void, are shocked. On one side, the golden and black treasures spread their wings for thousands of miles, without the shackles of the heavens, and stretched wantonly in the void. The huangmengmeng that fell from between the wings was comparable to the Buddha's light on Kong Tong's body, and even more so. Jin Wuming mingled, and at the same time lowered the unmatched golden on from his body, directly counteracting the air attack. The sword in the Buddha's prison cage had a slight gaze, and the first time the golden and black treasure appeared, he knew that there would be no second person besides Qing. Empty and retreat, I thought that the situation of 10 points and 9 steady, but arrogant, actually jumped out of such a supreme existence. After seeing the scene, monks such as Silence and He Jianqing also stepped back and were full of vigilance. The golden and black treasures dispersed and turned into a luxurious figure dressed in a gold costume. There were golden feathers all over his body, and he had the power to capture people. The person who came here was Qing. He didn't pause at all. He waved his arm and shattered the Buddha's prison. The time in Bai Shangxianzu, I'm back now. He looked at Jian Wushuang. If you want to owe me another favor, I will take you away. Jian Wushuang knew that the time in the mouth of the truth was in the northern celestial state, and he was hit hard by his stroke, almost breaking the source. One thing for one thing, 1 yard for 1 yard. He said coldly, how can it be confused? I Ching, stunned, apparently did not expect that he would not give face, so immediately did not know what to say. Not far away, the empty and silent duo looked at each other, and they both saw a surprise in the other's eyes. What kind of scene is such a golden realm with deep ancestors and ancestral veins if it is conquered and becomes a mount? It was a little ashamed that I Ching had returned to God and was ignorant of Jian Wushuang's ignorance. Damn fellow, you know that without my aid, you have already died, and you dare not appreciate it? Do you know that I could have left long ago, but only because of your hardship, would you come here and barely rescue you? Jian Wushuang listened to his angry voice, and then pointed his finger behind him. Di Qing looked back, and then he saw 2 bright heads, and a guy with a bad look came over. Little Jinwu, can you belong to the old seat and become the old mount? Empty hands folded together, a solemn face. Your dead bald donkey, dare to humiliate this seat? Di Qing was already on the top of his head, and was humiliated again, and his eyes were crimson. Lao Tzu as a mount? You don't look at how big your is? Di Qing jumped angrily, and even if he exploded in supreme power, he hit him both. The empty face sank, and he waved his hand to kill it. In other words, are you reluctant? The meaning of Qing is anger, and even if he sighs, infinite. Immediately, a huge black waboxiang who spread his wings thousands of miles came to the void. The dark tassels of the fringe, scattered from the wings of the black waboxiang, a heavy murderous intention swept up. At the next moment, the black sorrowful figure crowed and carried forward with the supreme momentum. At the same time, Qing's figure is no longer calm. When crossing Jian Wushuang and other people, Shen said, run, my law can't last long, the faster the better. Jian Wushuang had already realized that he was the end of a strong crossbow, so he did not hesitate to escape while he spoke. If it was during the heyday of the Qing dynasty, blocking these 2 Dayan immortals from the realm of Buddhism might not be a problem. But right now, he, who has also recovered 50% of his strength, is really likely to be accepted as a mount. For freedom and dignity, Di Qing chose to run the road for the first time. Chapter 4791. Empty and empty, the 2 snorted at the same time, stepped forward with their hands folded, and a great power surged out from all around them. The 2 collided heavily, belonging to the confrontation of Dayan immortal, bursting in this void. Even if Di Qing didn't recover completely, he was actually a solid Dayan immortal. He was once in Bai Shangxianzu and had the terrible strength of 1 battle and 2 battles. Therefore, the black and white treasure he released now is enough to hold the air and the dead together. Jian Qing and others were terrified and rushed back. But the terrifying aftermath that was enough to break the void still made their throats sweet, and then vomited a breath of blood. The black and white treasures were dispersed in the Qinghui town of Supreme Buddha, and both of them had dignity in their eyes. The shock that Diqing brought to them is more than that, they are already coveting. If you can take this Zuwu under your command as a mount, then your own strength can hardly be estimated. Immediately, the two of them set off, ready to conquer the truth. At this time, Jianqing waved his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, "Brother, we still need to find the whereabouts of Brother Empty Wheel." Kong Tong heard the words and turned his hand to point at the blood river in the area of the original Sand Demon Grotto. "The younger brother of the Empty Wheel is there. You go to help, we go to suppress the remaining evil." After the words were finished, the two bodies carrying great potential energy chased them again. At this moment, the five physiques ran away furiously in this boundless void, and even Cui Jing, who had previously been stunned by Jian Wushuang, was awakened by Qin Qing and followed with a dizzy turn. His mother, "This group of dead ball donkeys is like a mad dog. We had to kill us before. Now we have to take another mount. Isn't it saying that all 4 monks are empty? I think they do everything except close to female sex." Qin Qing gritted his teeth, apparently wishing to turn around and kill him. Di Qing turned his head, and his face rarely appeared nervous. "I said, but I saved your life just now, and I will protect me in any case later. It's still our destiny, we are the grasshoppers after the autumn, and we can't jump for a few days." Qin Qing was frustrated. "Damn." Di Qing snorted and ran away more desperately. If he was really caught and used as a mount, it would be more intolerable than killing him. Jian Wushuang's mood has always been dignified. He is thinking about how to get out completely. Immediately he no longer hesitated and quietly opened the bowl of yang. That is to say, at the same time, the two of the same, the empty and the silence chased them up, and directly released the infinite strength, overwhelming everyone. The purpose is to clear the eyes and break, already planning to fight against the water. At this moment, a deep, angry rumble rang through the void. Hundreds of thousands of tassels flowed out of the bowl and bottle, scattered over the ancient void, and finally gathered an old man in imperial clothes. Unmatched strength should be pointed up, jump around the old man. He has bizarre double pupils and supreme dignity, even Dianxian is inferior to him. Along with him was a prestigious elder dressed in a black emperor costume. The two figures are Su He and Dao Gong respectively. Di Qing looked back subconsciously, and when he saw these two figures, his frightened soul flew away, almost hit Qin Qing, and muttered in his mouth, "Emperor, Emperor." Qin Qing was also horrified. "I'm going to see Zhang." Chuanqiu was so moved that even if he said anxiously, "I'm still stupidly doing something, and I'll fold here if I don't run." In one sentence, he directly brought Diqing and Qin Qing back to their minds, and hurriedly urged them to escape. What did he do? Chuanqiu picked up Cui Jing. "Run." Jian Wushuang looked back at the real shadow of the two emperors, and then left. Faced with the force of the heavy cover, the two emperors were disdainful, but their halberds flicked their fingers, and the breeze that did not know where they came from dispelled the offensive of the two monks. The void is silent. The same, the two are also frowning fiercely, can't believe this scene in front of them. The emperor, the supreme existence. One side will be born in the large realm that contains countless heavens. Even in this great Yen Huan, the emperors are supreme and the existence of a dictatorship. Now there are two people directly. When are there so many emperors in this big division? The appearance of the two emperors made Kong Kong Tong and Kong Kong even have no idea of fighting. The emperor killed them, just like crushing an ant, only Di Hui could not resist them. "Retreat!" The two of them shouted at the same time, backed away and walked away. "Dao Gong Lao Air, do you want to teach them a meal?" Su He said in a deep voice. Ben Emperor loosened his bones. Dao Gong shook his head. "Don't try to regenerate the incident. The most important thing for us now is cultivation, not fighting. It's really boring." Su He pouted, but he still obeyed Dao Gong's meaning, and he prepared to leave. At this moment, a burst of noise suddenly sounded. "Dare to pretend to be an emperor and die to death." I saw that the two monks who had been far away had returned again, enough to cover the horror and coercion. Su He and Dao Gong stared at the same time, waving their arms to block. When the two collided, a tremendous loud noise erupted, the void was broken, and the endless aftermath stirred hundreds of millions of miles. Four figures backed up at the same time. Su He was furious, and Ing Run Di Hui surged from his body. Su, no. Dao Gong restrained Su's Emperor Hui, shaking his head solemnly. Although the entire domain is vast and boundless, they are all under the jurisdiction of Emperor Jin Wuyang. If they freely release Emperor Hui, they will surely be noticed. By then, Jin Wuyang will surely know that they did not die completely. Su He also knew the seriousness of this, and finally suppressed the urge to release Di Hui. Damn shit, dare to attack the emperor. Dao Gong was exasperated. In the same air and silence, the two silently said nothing, but the Buddha's light in their hands was covered again. The void concussion. The sword Wushuang, who was originally running away, noticed the vibration behind him, and there was a bad hunch rising in his heart. Su He, Dao Gong, and Yang Jun, although they are real emperors, control the emperor's luck, but their emperor's true body has long been broken, and even the true shadow is in the long years, and is nearly broken. In the beginning of 10,000 Eyes, Jian Wushuang could capture Yang Jun in the realm of immortality, which shows their weakness. Right now, let them face up to Dianxian. I'm afraid it will pay a big price. For a time, Jian Wushuang could not bear it. If the true shadows of the two emperors were broken, he would certainly be guilty. Thinking of this, he decided to go back and pick up. You are at ease, little friend. If the two old guys can't stop it, it will be too embarrassing for the emperor's face. Chapter 4792. The voice came from the bowl of Yang bottle, the voice of the tall and thin old man Yang Jun. Jian Wushuang heard the words and couldn't help saying, "Are they really all right?" The voice of the old god of Yang Jun sounded again. Reassure, the old Wuyang Laoer couldn't help us, but now how can he overturn the boat in this gutter? Let's just escape. With Yang Jun's affirmation, Jian Wushuang's dangling heart fell back into his stomach, and he dedicated himself to escape. At this moment, another shocking blow broke out, and the rest of the prestige directly took off several of them. Emperor Yang Jun, is it okay? I'm not sure. The two old guys seem to have been unstable all the time. Just when Jian Wushuang was about to ask again, a stream of light flew over from far and near. It's Dao Gong. However, at this moment, he looked a little embarrassed, carrying the real shadow of the Su River on his shoulders, and the two sides were blowing wind. Jian Wushuang looked at the reel, and directly opened the bowl to pick them up. For their true shadow state, only the bowl bottle that can nourish the soul is the most beneficial to them. Dang Gong's voice sounded when he plunged into the bowl of Yang, only 4 words, "Shall you run?" Jian Wushuang heard the words, without any hesitation, directly transported his strength, and fled again. Just before their forefoot left, the two bodies radiating radiant brilliance arrived. In the same air, the two were even more embarrassed to the extreme. The blood on the heads of the two shining bright men were covered with blood wounds, and even the upper half of Jingqi was covered with sensuous wounds. Obviously, the injuries were not light. "Hangdong, let's retreat. We can't go any further. Fear that the law enforcement officers of the local government will find us." I was dissuaded by the heavy silence of the wound. Kong Tong didn't speak, but the anger in his eyes reflected his inner true thoughts. Withdrawing so hard to understand my anger, the two of us would be so teased. Kong Tong was not reconciled, but he no longer moved forward. Then, facing the void in front of him, he suddenly waved a palm, and supreme power rushed past. "Let's go!" Gang Feng sobbed, coming from the so-called heavenly Buddha realm, and then returned. Feeling that the crisis like a thorn in the back disappeared, talents such as Jian Wushuang finally had a moment of breathing opportunities. Finally, there is no danger, but I'm exhausted. Chen Qing breathed heavily, breathlessly traversing dozens of heavens, which was very expensive for him. Only the truth is still unbelievable, and it seems that he has not recovered from the previous shock. Did you just see that 2 emperors appeared? Di Qing was shocked and looked at a few humans. Chen Qing heard the words and was also surprised. In addition to Zhenliang Emperor, how could there be other emperors in this big division? Are we wrong? Di Qing shook his head firmly and said, "No, I can never be mistaken. It is indeed a unique luck that only the emperor can have." Chuanqiu also said at this time, "It was a blessing that someone saved us, and now we still have to think about how to restore our strength and leave this place." After reminded by spring and autumn, several people discovered that they had reached a place where there was no starry day in the cold and dead void, and there was no other heaven. Here, it's like a piece that was wiped out by some external force, filled with gang wind and cold air. Strange, there is not even a heaven here. Chen Qing touched his chin and looked at the void. At this time, the void from the far away suddenly swept a layer of luminous Buddha light, with a tendency to destroy, swept across. The few people who stopped and gasped were shocked, and it was too late to evade. The void is broken, and the glorious Buddha light can shatter everything, but when it is far away from everyone, it seems to hit a layer of enchantment and suddenly dispersed, leaving only a few people with a blank face. What's the situation? Immediately afterwards, a fine cracking sound came into Jian Wushuang's ears. He was vigilant and found that the 5 people were the center, and the void began to collapse and shatter. At the next moment, an unimaginable vortex emerged from their feet, and while engulfing the void fragments, even they swallowed it together. Rao Shiqing could not resist, and the 5 figures disappeared in this vortex in a flash. Morin, the irresistible Morin, seems to be able to reach the bone marrow and freeze Yanli. In this chaotic vortex, Jian Wushuang can't even release the derivation force, and can only be passive. I don't know how long after that, the originally chaotic darkness suddenly disappeared, replaced by misty gray. Jian Wushuang's figure hit the sand and stone directly on the ground, and Qin Qing and others then fell like a dumpling. It's just asking Lao Tzu to die. Qin Qing opened his eyes and looked dizzy around. They were all caught here by the weird vortex, unknown. The dark sky dome presents a unique kind of silence and withering. Under the sky dome, there is endless dark brown ground. 3 or 2 twigs of twisted dead trees slanted on the ground, adding a bit of death and desolation. Where we'll die here? Jian Wushuang slowly glanced at everything in front of him. The world seemed to be silent for countless years, and the air was filled with a thick haze of lingering waves. There is no sense of crisis, there is no feeling in the world. Here is a real dead zone, a dead zone that is too dead to die. Jian Wushuang didn't expect that under the void, such a strange and mysterious place would be hidden. Chen Qing was shining in his eyes, looking at him with a little excitement. We may be this time, maybe it's into a mysterious cave somewhere. Mysterious Donggun? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. Chen Qing nodded, then said, "Speaking of our big division, the borders are infinite, enough to encompass countless heavens. But the most worth mentioning is that in the early days of the Great Division, countless great people were born. At that time, almost all of them followed Zhenliang Emperor to expand the territory, and finally established the heavenly court to achieve supreme achievements. And when expanding territory here and annexing the heavens, some supreme existed, especially like hoarding and collecting heaven and earth treasures. They opened up their own big realm to store their treasures. The place that we entered by mistake now and then may have been a mysterious cave that was created by one of the supreme existences and placed in one hand." Chen Qingmai's flirtatious dances. Obviously he can't wait for the exploration of this unknown sky and the exploration of unknown things. Chapter 4793. Looking at the dying, lifeless sky at the moment, Jian Wushuang doubts the authenticity of Qin Qing's words. This is like the mysterious cave that remains the treasure, saying that it is a dead tomb. Qin Qing scratched his head. But after all, although it is not the same as the places where treasures are imagined, there must be some treasures hidden, which may be of great use to us. At this time, Chunkius' voice sounded, "Brother Qin Qing, are you sure this is the treasure in your mouth, not a battlefield?" Jian Wushuang looked at the sound, and saw Chuanqiu bent over and waved his hand. A large piece of dark brown soil was pulled away, and a broken treasure sword was exposed. I don't know if it's been buried in the ground for many years, but the treasure sword still reflects the coldness of the people. But everyone's eyes looked down at the broken real sword. It was a shining bone that had disappeared from flesh and blood. He even held the last posture of his life, holding a real sword in one hand and covering his chest with one hand, but his head was gone. This is a white bone with the peak of Yenxian. Jian Wushuang determined at the first time that his fairy source was crushed by external forces, and even the same was crushed, as well as the real sword he stabbed before. There is no other possibility to directly kill such a peak of Yenxian except Dianxian. Jian Wushuang seemed to feel something, and he also reached out and rolled up the layers of dark brown sand. Next, a shocking scene appeared. With the peeling of the dark brown sand, all kinds of treasures with broken handles and a terrible body were exposed to the air. Looking around, there are hundreds of fairy bones. There are so many bones just under the hundreds of thousands of feet of ground. Are all the bones under the ground that has not been lifted? Only these exposed bones? Jian Wushuang glanced at them. All of them were Yenxian realm. How terrible should their opponents be so buried in so many Yenxian? The fairy body of Yenxian, even if he died, has no possibility of becoming a fairy bone after several years, but now, these dead Yenxian have been transformed into fairy bones, which can be seen that their time of death is definitely more than it's been 10 years. 1 year is enough for one party to reincarnate 10 times. 10 years can no longer be measured by years. Everyone's complexion unknowingly thickened up. This is definitely not the so-called treasure place in Shinkinka's mouth. It is an ancient battlefield. Looking at the ancient battlefield. Here, wouldn't it be the true Wuyang Emperor, when the big division was opened, the ancient battlefield left behind? Qin Qing murmured. But no one can answer him, all confused. Brother Jian, what shall we do? Shall we leave, or shall we investigate? Chuanqiu asked. Jian Wushuang waved those sands and buried the hundreds of fairy bones again, and then said, "Since we have come here by mistake, let's explore and say again, there is no longer any breath of spirits here." Big deal. Chuanqiu nodded and followed Jian Wushuang so far. He has long believed in Jian Wushuang's decision, and he firmly followed. Immediately, he followed behind Jian Wushuang and walked forward. Chen Qingxing was soaring, and from time to time he explored the places where there might be treasures. Di Qing didn't say much. As Jiao Zhuan died an immortal, he also realized that this side of the heavens had reached the point where he could no longer die, so he naturally followed Jian Wushuang to investigate. Only Cui Jing, a man who lost his soul, apparently has not walked out of Sha Qing's death. The 5 figures, headed by Jian Wushuang, shuttle through this deadly sky. The dark brown ground beneath your feet seems to have no boundaries, and it extends forward indefinitely. This shows a dark brown ground, which is not the color at the beginning, but the color infiltrated by the blood of the blood and Yenxian. Perhaps here, there has been a great ancient war, countless Yenxian, and even the great Yenxian died in this ancient war, and was eventually buried by the wind and sand, dead and desolate. As we moved forward, some changes began to appear in the distant sky dome. One after another, like a rift in the sky, tearing the sky dome, and at the same time there is a square column engraved with a mysterious ancient pattern, the broken wall, floating in the air still. An unspeakable, ancient silence, ancient atmosphere, unconsciously suppressed in everyone's mind. Looking at the quaint gravel distributed on the sky dome, Jian Wushuang began to build at the bottom of his heart, what happened in this war. When the ground underneath was broken and cracked, the broken buildings finally appeared in everyone's eyes. Chen Qing also became excited and his eyes became dignified. He has found that the sight cannot be simply described here. Brother Sword, what would you say is this place? Chen Qing asked, looking for an answer. Jian Wushuang did not answer him, but his figure accelerated. When there were faults and pits in the ground before him, he stopped and looked forward. Looking around, everyone was horrified again. I saw a broken, quaint, and broken hall suspended above the abyss on the broken ground in front. Despite its brokenness and antiquatedness, it shows a trend of being intriguing. Qingyun flowed slowly in front of the broken hall. Here, there is a heavenly court, the former shattered heavenly court. Sword Wushuang opened his mouth slowly and firmly. Chen Qing swallowed involuntarily and agreed with Jian Wushuang's conclusion. Only where the emperor once existed will there be a flow of emperor luck. Right now the giant palace floating in the abyss seems to have no other name to match its identity except the heavenly court. The grand sovereign belonging to the Emperor Zhenluyang had experienced the most tragic expansion in the early days of its establishment. Countless Jinghong Yanxian and even Dianxian have participated in this ancient war. No Yanxian knows how long this ancient war will last, because all the participants died, and those who did not die have become one of the elders under the Zhenluyang seat. But just the emperor who fell into the hands of Zhenluyang, never less than 10. Only Jian Wushuang knows that there are 4 of them. They are Yang Jun, Su He, and Dao Gong, who are now in the bowl of the bottle, and the emperor of the spring and autumn period, Fenghua Emperor. At the moment, such a broken old court is likely to have been established by an emperor who was defeated by Zhenluyang. I really didn't expect that in this dead void, there was still a broken heaven. Jian Wushuang sighed softly. Chapter 4794. Chen Qing also said afterwards, if this is really a former heaven, it is really rare to preserve it like this. After he finished speaking, he gave Jian Wushuang a secret smile. It can be found by them that this old heaven hidden in the void is of supreme nature and great opportunity. Even though it has become a dead zone and broken, even if you can find a hint of the emperor's existence here, it is an unimaginable opportunity. After achieving the position of Yanxian, time and years have become the most meaningless existence. Naturally, every step of the spiritual realization is unimaginable and unknown. The practice above Yanxian is no longer a life in 2, but a self-opening avenue from zero metamorphosis. The difficulty can be imagined. And the opportunity from Yanxian's enlightenment to Dianxian is to comprehend the fairy type. Once the fairy type is understood, it indicates that promotion to Dianxian is no longer unknown. But 99% of the immortals are stuck in this step of comprehending the immortality and can no longer make a half step. Because the road to promotion is so difficult, even Yanxian is keen to find some mysterious caves, trying to find the secrets left by the supreme power. Right now, there is a possibility that the atmosphere in this former heavenly court may be gathered up. Even Dianxian can't resist it. Standing at the end of several people, the eyes expressed covetedness, but he quickly returned to his normal look, without any movement. Jian Wushuang's heart was moved. If some kind of luck still exists in the former court of heaven for them, it is really a creation. Looking at the ancient silent heaven that was standing above the abyss of the earth, Jian Wushuang gave a few words, and then stepped on the broken earth and walked forward. Chen Qing and others followed up. Although they have been reduced to burial ground, they still remain vigilant. In case there is a terrible danger in the dark, for them who are already at the end of the crossbow, they are really dead. Stepping forward on the suspended stones underneath the feet, the cold aura blew out of the abyss without seeing the bottom. The strength here is so thin that it can hardly be understood and absorbed, which means that Jian Wushuang and others will not get the slightest supplement here. Everything was so dead that he could hear his breath. Jian Wushuang walked carefully over the abyss. At the next moment, it seemed that something unknown was touched, and the abyss at the foot suddenly set off a breath of extreme air. Jian Wushuang reacted first, his arms shuddered suddenly, and Yan Li slammed down. The two competed against each other and swept through a shocking hurricane. Chen Qing and others also foretell that they would step into the air and avoid the hurricane that swept through. The gravel over the entire abyss was blasted away and the hurricane lasted for a long time. The sword has no double-faced dignity, and he looks under the abyss like a deep abyss. Click, click. A bit of bitterness, like the sound of unlubricated bones, came from that abyss. At the next moment, 3 Changhong streamers suddenly rushed out of the extremely dark abyss and into the sky. Those who break into heaven, die. The sound of Hongzhong de LV is like a thunder sky, resounding through the 8 wastelands. When the Changhong streamer dissipated, the 3 bones holding the real sword were reflected in Jian Wushuang's eyes. These 3 sensuous bones are full of strange colorful wamangs all over their bodies. Their clothes have long been ragged to the extreme, and even the real sword in the palms of the bones has been broken, full of barrenness and ancient silence. But no one dared to underestimate them, even if they have been dead for countless years, but that belongs to Dian Xian's breath, even time cannot be erased. 3 bones, 3 great Yanxian. Despite their avatars, their obsession keeps them guarding the heavenly court, so that no one can get close. Their celestial bodies are not completely free of flesh and blood, and there are a pair of shiny eyes scattered in their orbits. Those who break into heaven, die. They repeated it again, the real sword shattered in his hand, and the sword headed directly at Wushuang. Jian Wushuang did not retreat. They inadvertently came to this formerly shattered heaven. The purpose was to find a possible opportunity. It would be a great regret if they returned. Opportunities and dangers coexist, so he doesn't want to retreat. Others have similarly found a former heaven. This is something that they dare not even imagine. If they don't go to investigate, I'm afraid no one will be reconciled. But in the face of such 3 great Yanxian, no one has confidence. For a time, Qin Qing and others looked at Jian Wushuang. What should I do, brother sword? Shall we rush in directly? Qin Qing's voice passed. Jian Wushuang didn't speak. At the next moment, when everyone hadn't responded, he actually broke up directly, and an invisible sword was quietly condensed in his hand, and he cut off his head against the 3 fairy bones. The space is shattering, and the sword that carries the general trend is cut without any obstruction. The guardian in front of the fairy bone tried to lift the broken real sword in his hand to stop it. But under this sword, its real broken sword was completely broken. The invisible sword cut off the real sword and fell on the shoulder of the guardian of the fairy bone. A sword that is not going to be unfavorable, but left no trace at all. Immortal Bone Guard raised his palm directly and flew out the sword Wushuang. A trespasser, one will not stay. They took a step back at the same time, each holding up the real sword in their hands, surging out the momentum of the power, and suddenly condensed into a magnificent sword array, leading the sky and pushing forward. 36,000 swords, each sword became a mountain and sea, and Wang Yang raged. Qin Qing and others were frightened and hurried to release the Yanli confrontation, but Jian Wushuang spoke with it. Don't move, don't release Yanli. Although Chuanqiu was puzzled, he dissipated his strength and stood in place for the first time. Qin Qing was shocked. The Yanli, who was about to get out of his hand, was agitated. He couldn't understand the meaning of Jian Wushuang's words, but he immediately crushed Yanli with his teeth. Cui Jing, who is the weakest, has not yet understood what is going on, and the dynamism that almost came out of his hands was also immediately killed by Qin Qingshun. Di Qing's eyes were dignified, and he faced the unspoken sword intent. If he did not resist, he would definitely die. In this way, he had only 8 real lives left, but 1 more had to be removed. He was hesitating whether to do it or not. 36,000 sword intentions lead the world down, like the brilliance to the ultimate Huang, swallowing everyone. At this last moment, Di Qing finally gave up the resistance to release the Yanli forces. In the face of that uncovered sword, the palm of his extravagant hand had already condensed into a fist. Chapter 4795. He is betting. They are betting. You are right to bet against the sword. Including Jian Wushuang is also gambling. This celestial sword array they bet with cannot be lowered. The reason for betting is that there is absolutely no way to make a decision. These few people really want to fight. They are by no means the opponents of the 3 Dian immortals who do not know the depth. 36,000 swords hover. At this moment, even Qing Qing had forgotten to breathe. The sharp edge of the sword, hovering in front of everyone's eyes, did not go further. Heaven and earth were dead, and the swordsmanship that hovered suddenly, like wind and sand, retreated. Jian Wushuang spit out a clouded breath, and his beating heart calmed down. Everyone breathed a breath for the rest of their lives after the robbery, and even Qing Qing could not help but re-examine him. This is in Bai Shangxian's Hu, which can attract his attention, and the strength of Yenxian realm can give him a young man who feels like a thorn in the back. It is never so simple and ordinary as he shows. Di Qing was curious, how many secrets did he still have, and what purpose did he have to swim in this big domain? Jian Wushuang bet on the right. These fairy bone guards who were originally supported by the last obsession, after the threat disappeared, their offensive then disappeared. It was too late to be happy, and the next thing caused Jian Wushuang several people into deep contemplation. Although they escaped this offensive, their purpose was not to stop there, but to go to the heavenly palace. With these 3 immortal bone guards on guard, it is almost impossible to smoothly enter the temple of heaven. But he couldn't release Yen Li to fight against it. For a while, even Wushuang felt thorny. Since what supports them is obsession, can dispelling obsession persist in them? Jian Wushuang thought to himself secretly, and then he moved, facing the 3 immortal bone guards, said, "Do you know your current situation? Those who break into heaven, die." They repeated this sentence. He went on to say, "You, together with this heavenly court, including your emperor, have actually perished. Now you are just obsessed and have no meaning." The 3 immortal bone guards didn't speak anymore, and Jian Wushuang's words seemed to evoke their long-lasting sleep memories, and the light in his eyes began to fluctuate. Jian Wushuang saw the effect of his words, and took another dose of fierce medicine. "Why, don't believe it? But the fact is that your heaven has already been destroyed. All those who participated in the war, no Yenxian can survive, all it became a dead bone." After he finished speaking, his arms moved back, and the floating soil on the ground was lifted up, exposing the infinite layers of fairy bones. "In fact, you have all died out in that war, just sleep well in the next time." Looking at the layers of fairy bones, the tragedy of the previous war reappeared. They were in pain, the obsession in the body, and the strength began to dissipate, and then fell back into the abyss. It was only tens of hours, and everything fell back into silence, and the violent ferocity disappeared. "Go!" Jian Wushuang waved towards the dazed crowd, and then swept towards the heavenly court. Qin Qing and others also reacted and hurried to keep up. Jian Wushuang, who was about to enter the heavenly court, suddenly stopped again, as if remembering something, turned around and urged Yen Li to bury the exposed numerous fairy bones again. After doing all this, he hurried to heaven. Stepping into the broken square, the 5 figures appeared extremely small. Compared with the magnificent palace of Zhenliang Emperor, this magnificent heavenly court, although not as magnificent as it is not as unremarkable as it is. On this broken square, there are also bloodstains, which belong to Yangxian's bloodstain, which can survive the reincarnation of all ages, and today it exudes rich strength. Everything is showing the tragic war that happened here. But what makes Jian Wushuang somewhat puzzled is that this entire heavenly court does not seem to have suffered much damage. Could it be that the battle between the emperors and the emperors could not damage this heavenly court? It seems that this heaven is not like being destroyed, but more like being sealed. Jian Wushuang's thinking stopped with Qin Qing struggling to open the gate of the imperial palace. No obvious smell came out, and even any luck, the breath did not show the slightest. Then, everyone crept into this heavenly court. A unique dark blue hue, reflected in Jian Wushuang's eyes. The interior of this vast expanse of heaven is magnificent and majestic, and all that is visible is the decoration painted in dark blue tones. The heavenly dome above the head depicts thousands of flying birds, showing an indescribable prestige. In this heavenly court, on the 18 mountain and sea columns lined up left and right, the totems of birds are also depicted in dark blue tones. These flying birds are all of the same characteristics. They have hexagonal heads, golden eyes, dark and magnificent bodies, and are extremely luxurious. Qin Qing and others are looking at this majestic heavenly court, but only Qin Qing's eyes that have been silent for a long time have been glorious. Jian Wushuang's gaze locked in the deepest place after entering this heavenly court. There was a towering throne standing still. Sitting on the throne, a figure was sitting. A figure in Moyu Luyun Emperor's costume. There are thousands of black lotus blossoms on both sides of this invisible body. I don't know how many years have passed, and they have never withered. Everything showed a mysterious state. What makes Jian Wushuang strange is that no matter how he looks, he can't see through the face of the figure in the imperial clothes. Qin Qing and others also noticed the figure sitting deep on the throne deep in that court. It seems that it is already dead. Feeling the breath of silence in the hall, Qin Qing opened his eyes. Jian Wushuang didn't speak. He also felt the same. Sitting on the throne, the incomparable figure really had no breath and was dead. His emperor's body is ancient. The emperor's luck has completely dissipated. This emperor, even if it fell, the general situation surging from the whole body made Yan Xian tremble. Behind the death of an emperor is the fall of countless heavens, Yan Xian, and even Dian Xian's death. This battle of unknown era was eventually buried with the death of one emperor. Jian Wushuang has no doubt that the emperor now waved his hands to destroy countless Yan Xian, suppress countless enemies, open up infinite territory, and establish heaven. But right now, everything is meaningless. The heavenly court he created eventually became a burial ground, and countless Yan Xian also turned into dead bones. But at the end of the destruction, it was good to be able to die so decently. Chapter 4796. Feeling the complete dissipation of the emperor's luck, Qin Qing sighed. In this whole heavenly court, although it is vast and magnificent, there are no treasures that can be taken away, and some are just dead. Brother Sword, let's meet the emperor's true body to see if there are any treasures or insights that will catch your eye? Qin Qing asked. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and did not object to him. He came to this heavenly court for the purpose of treasure hunting. If he did not seek the treasure, it would be called unreasonable karma. As he prepared to leave, he stood at the end of the crowd, suddenly violently, and went straight to the emperor's body in the depths of heaven. Fuck, I knew that this guy was not well-meaning, and the Sword Brothers would keep up with it. Qin Qing exclaimed, his feet suddenly rushed to catch up. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate. Almost at the same time as Qin Qing set off, he also set off. The three streamer-like figures are chasing me, but in a moment, they reach the deepest part of this heavenly court. In front of him is the base, the real body of the emperor wearing Muyu Lian's costume. Being so close, Jian Wushuang could see the face of the dead emperor clearly. His facial features are handsome and deep, with a somewhat restrained shadow, perhaps because his face is too handsome, covering up the deep texture of his facial features. Just like an emperor who had already died, now his eyes are closed, like a nap, so that no one can see that he no longer has any breath and luck. Di Qing turned his head back and looked at Jian Wushuang and Qin Qing coldly, and then walked without any scruples, walking among the innumerable black lotus, close to the throne. Qin Qing was furious and directly released his strength, and he fought against him regardless of his preparation. Jian Wushuang pulled him at the right time, and his head shook his head calmly, as if he had no plans to fight or snatch. Qin Qing also knew that Jian Wushuang was thoughtful, and that he must have some kind of plan to stop him from fighting. After he snorted, he gave up the fight with Di Qing. But he couldn't help saying, "Brother Sword, are we really going to go and investigate? That's the real body of the emperor. If there is any emperor's treasure, it must be swallowed by the guy to the whale. Don't worry, just wait and see." Jian Wushuang didn't worry at all, the old god was saying. Seeing this, Qin Qing had no choice but to stay in place, staring angrily at Di Qing's back. Walking in the lotus path with great strides, it seemed that Qin Qing could not restrain the excitement in his heart, and his eyes were full of anxiety. After walking for more than 1,000 steps, he finally stood in front of the mighty emperor's seat. Facing the still emperor body, he swallowed his throat and reached directly with his hand to touch it. But only a moment later, I Ching quickly withdrew his palm. I saw his right hand stretched out, covered with scars at this moment. Blood was dripping from the scars, and the pain was very stinging. The body of the emperor's real body, the Muyu Luyun emperor's suit, was sketched by a piece of black ink feathers, and the tail of each piece of ink feathers was too sharp, so that the anxious Di Qing did not pay attention arrived and was injured. But he didn't care at all. The scar on his palm recovered instantly, and then he stretched out his palm and stuck it to the position of the emperor's true body, and could not wait to feel it. Chen Qing was not angry. This thing is actually thinking of swallowing everything, and it really is not a good thing near Gongzi Mo. Jian Wushuang didn't listen to Chen Qing's complaints. At this moment his eyes were gathered behind Di Qing's, the lotus path with the spreading black lotus. I wonder if it's his illusion. The still black lotus seems to be much taller than before, and it has become a lot bigger. He began to feel that there seemed to be a problem in this grave and dead heaven. Seemingly to confirm his thoughts, the next moment, the black lotus in the lotus lanes on both sides suddenly grew wildly, and then all twisted the Qing Qing in front of the throne. Where is the Qing Qing who is in excitement to predict such a crisis? When he responds, thousands of tentacle-like lotus necks are directly wrapped around his limbs and dragged down. This horrifying scene happened only in the blink of an eye. When everyone responded, Di Qing was under siege. Chen Qing immediately grinned and said, "This retribution comes so fast?" However, all this is just the beginning. A sensational trend quietly spread out from the throne. Immediately afterwards, a dark cyan flowing cloud sprang from the cranial crest of the emperor's real body, and a dark blue hue with a hexagonal head and golden-eyed flying bird was quietly condensed in the air. Ha! It was just clear, and the irresistible sound waves swept through the heavens in an instant. Jian Wushuang felt that the heart could not bear it and burst. The spring and autumn with a slightly weaker state, and Cui Jing even vomited and spit blood, and the breath faded. It was horrible at first. Such a flying bird flying from the cranial crest of the emperor's real body, carrying an immense momentum, hovered in the air, and the golden eye wheel revealed the dignified color. Then, it changed abruptly and became a stream of clouds, which directly drilled into the fairy body of Di Qing. Ah! The unbearable pain resounded. The skin of Di Qing was tearing, and the blood of the gods was falling. It seemed to be unbearable. It could burst at any time. The body is good, but unfortunately I dare to covet the last breath of this emperor. I can only destroy air. A cold, solemn, and irresistible prestige sounded resoundingly. The fairy body of Dianxian was irresistibly destroyed. Seeing this, Chen Qing couldn't help but whispered, "Brother Sword, let's run as fast as we can now. It's too late to be late." Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, walking slowly, and then withdrew his figure. This kind of irresistible emperor's breath, even the weakest one, is not conceivable. If they are iron, they will only be smashed their heads in the end. The four bodies slowly receded, and after trying to move to a certain distance, they flew out of heaven with a rush. But then, Di Qing's figure stopped exploding, and his blood-stained red eyes suddenly looked at Jian Wushuang and others. Air waited for Zhenwu Yang to be the head of the thief, and wait for my last obsession to kill. Run! Jian Wushuang's heart suddenly sank. He directly released Yen Li, and suddenly pushed Chen Qing 3 people into 1,000 feet. But he himself was already incapable of escape, and the essence of the blood dripping with blood was quietly coming behind him. The palm with a very hot breath was attached to Jian Wushuang's back heart, making him fall into the ice cave, and even the rebellious mind was not born. Quick escape! Di Qing's voice came from the position of his belly. He even reluctantly affected the emperor in his fairy body. Chapter 4797. The blazing killer had a moment of stagnation. It was this momentary stagnation that made Jian Wushuang breathe. He tried almost all his energy and fled to escape. But it was still half a minute late. Unparalleled, beyond the terrible atmosphere of imagination, it is easy to directly destroy the sword without arms. His right arm holding the invisible sword was completely broken. In exchange for the chance of escaping at the cost of breaking one arm, cold sweat flows from Jian Wushuang's temples. That kind of irresistible, intangible breath is really terrible. Just the last emperor's obsession is so terrifying. If the emperor came in person, what would it be like? Good boy, you can escape. Di Qing looked at him coldly. If at first I might accept you as an emissary, but now, those who dare to touch the heavens will be destroyed. Hong Zhong's voice resounded loudly, and his pupil with golden eyes scanned everyone present. Chuanqiu and Cui Jing, who are a little weaker, seem to be unable to bear the unnamed oppression at this moment and kneel directly on the ground. Chen Qing was obviously not well received, but he still struggled to get rid of the shackles, his arms stretched out, trying to drag Jian Wushuang out of the range. But Xingho Anning competed with Hao Yue, and the momentum he released was directly obsessed and defeated by the emperor in the body of Qing Xian. The sword with the right arm broken shattered, and there was no possibility of escape. He was already deciding to disperse all his strength and try his best to preserve the last breath. The entire heaven is trembling. Although it is the last emperor's obsession, they may still be easily beheaded and destroyed. No one can escape the sanctions of the emperor. Jian Wushuang only felt like he had fallen into the endless abyss. The ice was cold to the extreme, and every cell was breaking. Jin Sheng Dasheng seems to have pronounced their death. Did it really die like this? He couldn't believe it, and the deep face reflected in Qing Qing's cold face. Everything is annihilating and the final fall apart. Just when the emperor obsessed and lowered the punishment, a sudden and outdated doubt sounded around Jian Wushuang's body. How can there be such a familiar atmosphere here? Have you two old things been found? It was the voice of the tall, thin old man Yang Jun that came from the bowl of Yang. Jian Wushuang shuddered as if grabbing the last life-saving straw and desperately opened the bottle stopper of the bowl Yang bottle. Yang Jun's figure came out of the bowl of Yang, and his eyes directly locked the body of Yi Qing, a little surprised. The original Qing, who was lowering the penalty, also stopped the action and exuded the golden eye pupils, which was also unbelievable. Yang Jun. 6 crows? Two suspicious voices sounded simultaneously. The tall, thin old man Yang Jun couldn't believe it. He went straight ahead and circled around Qing Qing. He murmured in his mouth, "Aren't your old kid not dead of scum? Why did you become this pair? Appearance?" Yi Qing took a deep breath and stared at Yang Jun for a while, and then he was a little uncertain. "You? Is it really Yang Jun? Wandering through the sky of the sky, who can find the second place, who is more emperor than my Yang Jun?" Yang Jun stood straight, caressing. "It really is you." Di Qing's eyes twitched slightly, and then he said with emotion, "I didn't expect that I could meet an old friend before I was going. Having said that, I remember that you haven't. How come you are fully recovered now?" Yang Jun was a little puzzled and looked at him carefully. Di Qingwen smiled bitterly, and then a dark cloud of smoke poured from the top of the skull. At the same time as the plume of dark blue clouds of smoke blew out, Di Qing's entire body was directly weak, and then fell into the hole, fainting to death. The cloud smoke slowly formed in the air, and finally condensed into a real body of the emperor in Muyuli Yundi costume. "My real shadow has long been broken in that war, and even my real body has turned into powder, and now what you see me is just one obsession that is about to dissipate." Called the Emperor of 6 Crows by Yang Jun, a touch of loneliness flashed through Qi Jin's pupils. After hearing this remark, Yang Jun couldn't control the angry voice. "Damn Zhenwu Yang, when the emperor is completely restored, he will keep his blood feud." At the same time, 2 streamers streamed out of the bowl and came to the emperor Liuya. 6 Crows, long time no see. Su He, who was born with bizarre double pupils, and Dao Gong, who had face and prestige, all appeared together, smiling. Emperor Lu Crow's eyes narrowed, and finally he smiled. "I know, you 3 old guys must be alive." The year was gone, only to see the last one at this moment. The atmosphere was a bit heavy, and the 3 emperors naturally realized that the real shadow of the Emperor of the 6 Crows had long since disappeared, and now he was only the last obsession. You are too stubborn, don't understand the reason of leaving the Green Hills, and don't fear that there is no firewood." Yang Jun sighed, and the old friend who was also the emperor became the look of the moment, and he was very lonely. But the 6 Crow Emperor smiled comfortably. "I was shattering the real shadow, and at the beginning, I also put Zhen Wuyang together fiercely, leaving him a wound that could not heal. If I were to choose one more time now, I still do it. This is my destination. You don't have to worry about it. Since you all left a real shadow, there will be a day to recover. It is not too late to ask Zhen Wuyang to collect debts." The three emperors saw that the six-crow emperor was so open-minded and could not help asking, "Lu Crow, have you put down?" "Put down." Emperor Liu took a deep breath, and then scolded with full energy, "Put down, I let his mother's fart go, I want to give birth to his bone blood all the time, to give my son burial with people." The three emperors looked at each other, and they all couldn't cry or laugh. This is the style of this emperor who seems to be calm, and everything is superficial. It seemed that the imprisonment had been thrown away, and Lu Chao then simply said, "Lao Tzu is about to die and kill the true Wu Yang. I will leave it to the three of you guys to do it. Remember, if there is a day, don't forget to stab me a sword." It's a pity that in the end, we four emperors can't swallow once. Emperor Liu was sorry. Yang Jun heard the words and seemed to feel something. His nose shook slightly, and then turned to look at Qin Qing below. Qin Qing, who was dragging Jian Wushuang back, only felt that an inexplicable crisis had arisen, and the cold hairs behind him all stood up. I smelled, this kid has the smell of wine. Yang Jun little, and then stretched his hand a long way, directly picked the wine gourd from the waist of Qin Qing. Chapter 4798. Qin Qing was frightened, almost opening subconsciously, but then Jian Wushuang covered his mouth with his hands. "Don't make a sound." Qin Qing nodded, and no longer dared to make a sound. At that moment, the wine jug that was taken away by Yang Jun was actually filled with chewing wine. Right now, Yang Jun unplugged the cork and drank with the other three emperors. Di Qing woke up from fainting death. When he saw the four emperors drinking, he was terrified and moved to Jian Wushuang quickly. "Come on, go." Di Qing whispered, his eyes full of panic. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Although these six crow emperors and Yang Jun three emperors are old acquaintances, this does not mean that they are safe. After all, it was they who first thought of entering this heavenly treasure hunt, and now it is a blessing to be able to exit steadily. Immediately, Wu Dao was ready to leave heaven while the four emperors were drinking. "Stop." Emperor Liu's eyes shot a cold light. "Those who covet my heavenly court want to leave like this?" Cold sweat flows from everyone's temples, and the pressure brought by the emperor is too vast to make them fall into the ice cave. Six crows they can kill, only the little friend can't kill. Yang Head filled a mouthful of wine, and Yang Jun then pointed at Jian Wushuang. "Why?" Emperor Liu asked. "Because that little friend is destined to wait for me and shoulder a big responsibility," Yang Jun mysteriously said. The Emperor Lu Crow did not refute, and his eyes automatically dismissed Jian Wushuang and looked at Qin Qing and Qin Qing. Immediately, the great crisis between life and death made them all look at Jian Wushuang. "Can't kill, senior." Just as the six-crow emperor was about to start, Jian Wushuang's calm voice sounded, and then he slowly stood up. His arm was broken and he had not fully recovered. His figure was crumbling and his face was not half bloody. "We have been chased and killed by the outside world before, and we did not intend to break into this former heaven court by chance. It wasn't that we came here deliberately with the coveted heart, not to mention that several of us didn't make a move that harmed the heaven court. It would be too much to justify beheading us in this regard." In the solemn hall, only Jian Wushuang's calm voice echoed. The six-crow emperor heard the words and sneered. Without the coveted heart, why did he touch the true body of this emperor? Aye. Di Qingru fell into the ice cave and looked at Jian Wushuang like a cry for help. He frowned slightly, thinking quickly about the countermeasures in his mind. A moment later, Jian Wushuang raised his head and said, "Senior, this is indeed our first priority. I was thinking of seeing the true face of the emperor, but because I couldn't help myself, I subconsciously touched the real body of the emperor. It was really guilty." At this point, he turned to look at Di Qing, calmly said, "Di Qing, cut off one arm." Di Qingwen said it was startled, then nodded without any hesitation. This is Jian Wushuang found him a step to avoid death, in exchange for a living path at the expense of one arm. He didn't hesitate to wave his palm to his arm, but then he found that he couldn't cut it. Sword Wushuang saw it, and his heart sank, indicating that the six-crow emperor did not intend to give them a way to live. The six-crow emperor hovering in the air snorted coldly. Just want to calm down this matter with just one arm? Judging from the cold tone of Emperor Liuya, it is obvious that he still decided not to let them go, but Jian Wushuang looked calmly and said, yes, just an arm. Buzz! The unparalleled emperor's majesty swept up and almost crushed them all into powder in a flash. Then, Emperor Liuya raised his arm and dragged Jian Wushuang directly from the air. The unspeakable suffocation brought him close to death. Aren't you afraid of me? The six-crow emperor's voice without any emotion resounded. Jian Wushuang looked at him directly and said hoarsely, afraid, but everything can be solved without fear. Instead of being afraid, it is better to find the best solution. There was so much silence in the heavenly court, even so dead that he could breathe. I don't know how long it took. The six-crow emperor like a stone statue moved, and the corner of his mouth quietly evoked a trace of an imperceptible arc. The three emperors Yang Jun glanced at each other, and then whispered back, come on, I will wait for you to take a look first. Don't fart, you all can't help yourself, what help can you give him? The disdain on the face of Emperor Lu Crow overflowed with words, and then looked at Jian Wushuang. Your kid has an appetite for me, and I want to give you a great chance. Jian Wushuang heard that although his head was a little dazed, he still reacted at the first time, and shook his head simply, the junior qualifications are mediocre, I am afraid I can't take it or forget it. The atmosphere was frozen, everyone was shocked, and even the three emperors Yang Jun were shocked. An emperor, even the emperor's obsession and the opportunity given by himself, are enough to let countless heavens fall into a melee battle, and countless Dayan immortals fall into madness. It is a supreme and undesirable existence. But now, it was actually rejected. Everyone is puzzled, only Jian Wushuang has his own thoughts. No chance for no reason, if you want to get it, you must pay the corresponding price. If he bears the great chance of the six-crow emperor, there will be corresponding entrustment waiting for him. After hearing his rejection, the six-crow emperor was also stunned, but he even said angrily, if you don't know what to say, you must agree if you don't agree today. At the end of the speech, his phantom was suddenly dimmed, and then countless strands of dark blue huameng rushed out of his body and directly led to Jian Wushuang's body. Heavenly court trembles and collapses at the same time. Listen kid, my last obsession is about to die completely. The great chance I gave you is very much tolerable and perceptible. Now, I will give you the last obsession and sentiment, and understand it well. The final obsession of Six-Crow Emperor was collapsing and dissipating, and a pair of golden pupils stared at Jian Wushuang. If you finally get to that step, don't forget to poke me a sort of Zhen Wuyang Lao air, and talk to comfort. The Six-Crow heavenly scriptures can be enlightened and usable, but they must not follow my path. Jian Wushuang has been unable to speak, as if the fiery heat that even the soul can burn in each of his cells. An irresistible amount of external force poured into his body, leaving indelible marks in his mind and in his consciousness. His broken arm is growing rapidly with terrifying force. The 5 dark cyan characters of Lu Tian Tian Di when turned into dense lines, accompanied by the general trend, with the breath of Wanggu Emperor, all lit up in the sword of Wushuang's consciousness. Chapter 4799. This is the supreme perception of the Emperor, and no one knows how powerful these ciphertexts will be. But only the word Emperor is enough. The Emperor represents supremacy, and the Emperor's perception is naturally supreme. As the Six-Crow Heavenly Emperor essays continued to flow into Jian Wushuang's mind, he gradually became clear and enlightened with some reasonableness, especially the enlightenment of the realm. He knows that in this great Yen Huan, Yen Xian has a transcendental meaning. Above Yen Yen is the so-called Dayan Xian realm. But if you want to enter the realm of Dayan Immortal, you must feel the immortal style in the territory of Yen Xian. The so-called immortal style is equivalent to a bridge, which is built to reach the point of succession. And after entering the realm of Dayan Immortality, it is divided into 3, 5, 9 turns, 3 small realms. Of course, What shocked Jian Wushuang most was that the emperor was actually in the realm of Dian Fairy. The emperor, who was mysterious and controlled Wan, did not exceed the realm of Dian Immortal, which was not thought by Jian Wushuang. Each of the 3 transits of Dian Immortal is a heaven. The 3-turn Dian Immortal can skillfully use the Immortal style, the 5-turn Dian Immortal, carrying the light wheel of the Yen force, and thoroughly crushing the Dian Immortal under the 5-turn. Above 5 revolutions, it is 9 revolutions, which is also Jin Woody's current state, and its strength is unfathomable. After getting the feelings and obsessions of the 6 Crow Emperors, Jian Wushuang learned about the Emperor's luck, and he also knew that the Emperor's strength was the best. Although the Emperor did not transcend the realm of Dian Immortal, it was obviously different from Dian Immortal. Even if it is the essence of Jiuzhuan Dian Immortal, in the face of the slightest obsession of the 6 Crow Emperor, there is only the situation of worship. In the final analysis, it is the existence of the Emperor's luck. The Emperor is the title, the cohesion of the common luck of countless heavens, and the infinite change is beyond the scope of Dian Fairyland, but it is Dian Fairy. From the perspective of Jian Wushuang, Dian Xian is already the pinnacle of all realms, and the Emperor is the pinnacle of existence. After sorting out the problems between the realms, Jian Wushuang realized in his heart that he no longer resisted the opportunity and obsession given to him by Emperor 6 Crow. My request is not excessive. Even if you don't want to be an enemy of Zhenliang in the future, then take my understanding and live well to open up a realm in this great Yanhuan. With the transmission of the last sentiment completed, the Emperor Lu Crow's obscurity of obscurity has been extremely dim, and there is a possibility of dissipation at any time. Looking at the unsmiling and expressionless Emperor in front of him, Jian Wushuang bowed his head in salute. I will. The obsession of Emperor Liuya finally dissipated completely. On the occasion of his death, he finally greeted the whole family of Zhenliang with the last sentence he left. The demise of the emperor was not so shocking. Even the entire heavenly court did not collapse completely. Everything is silent. Perhaps he died long ago, dozens of years ago. Because of his obsession, it has been supported until today. The 3 emperors' complete demise of their old friends seems to be extremely indifferent, but all the wine in the wine gourd is dumped into the heavenly court to talk about comfort. Endless shouyuan, countless battles, brothers and friends have long passed away, they have all experienced it, and they are sure that they will enter that kind of footsteps in the future, so naturally there is no need to be hypocritical. The whole heaven was silent, as calm as they were before. The 3 emperors and real shadows all smiled slightly at him, and their hind bodies became invisible, and they fell into the bowl of yang again. Slowly spit out a murky breath, Jian Wushuang seemed to collapse, falling from the air and sitting on the ground. Chen Qing quickly approached, the excitement on his face could not be concealed at all. Brother Sword, this is your future path of spiritual practice. It's worry-free. That's the Emperor's gift. Jian Wushuang heard the words and shook his head with a wry smile. What the Emperor Luya just said was still in his ears. The 6 Crow Heavenly Emperor can be enlightened and available, but it must not be able to follow his path. This belongs to the Emperor's perception, and his future use will inevitably affect his mind. This is why the 6 Crow Emperors will say this. Jian Wushuang also knows the stakes, so he is not planning to enlighten him. His condensed right arm is intact, but if you look closely under the skin of the entire arm, a dark blue bird flying like a totem is drawn by the meridian, and it will soon disappear. The news of the heavenly survival of this death completely shocked a few people, especially Di Qing, and some are still unbelievable. But soon, he recovered and looked at Jian Wushuang with a complex face. Thank you for the matter just now. No need to thank you, it's also reported your previous kindness. Jian Wushuang shook his head. I Ching stunned slightly, and soon understood the previous grace in his mouth, referring to him at the most critical juncture, which restrained the obsession of the 6 Crow Emperor and gave Jian Wushuang a chance to escape. I Ching spoke up and smiled and then stopped talking. Jian Wushuang also said no more. For him, the meaning of Qing, from initial resentment, to vigilance, to indifference, to today's talk, has changed too much unconsciously. Just a scene from the previous critical moment makes Jian Wushuang feel that this guy is not as bad and untouchable as imagined. It should be possible to try contact. After sorting out this relationship, he set his eyes on the heavenly court again. Now that the 6 crow emperors in charge of this heavenly court have dissipated, the entire heavenly court has become a truly unowned thing. Just as Qin Qing and others were eager to move, the sounds of Hong Zhong and De Lu sounded outside the heavenly court. Those who break into heaven, die. The familiar voice was made by the 3 immortal bone guards guarding the front of the heavenly court. Jian Wushuang suddenly became alert. Qin Qing frowned. No, we haven't been in the front foot for a long time. Someone has found it in the back foot? Could it be 3 or 2 crossing the road? Entered here by mistake? Soon, a large number of aftermaths of warfare from outside the heavens foretold that the situation was not as simple as they thought. Let's go and see. Jian Wushuang got up, and the vigorous force was surging. His dynamism and state have returned to the peak. As long as the Comer is not Dian immortal, he is confident to destroy it. Qin Qing and others nodded, followed by Jian Wushuang to the sky outside. Outside the heavenly court at this moment, under the chaotic and dark sky, everything suddenly became disturbed. The broken treasure true sword, the corpse after Yen Xian's death, and the violent Yen Li Gang wind were all miserably scattered in the abyss. The 3 immortal bone guards that once again condensed from under the abyss were also hit hard. Chapter 4800. Most of their fairy bones were broken, and the precious light that was flowing around was also damaged. The sky domes are faintly falling. Those who are fighting against the guardian of the immortal bones originally had nearly 100 yenxian, but now they have lost more than half. Although he was dead, Dian Immortal's final obsession was still terrifying. The martyrdom that resulted from their engagement has left this side silent for a few days, and the heavens are about to break. This is a big battle. With the continuous fall of Yen Xian, these 3 immortal bone guards are finally unable to support. The immortal bone guard who suffered the most attacks finally dissipated, and one of the immortal bones was smashed by Yen Li. And the Yen Xian who had suffered more than half of the damage finally stopped the casualties and began to use huge Yen Xian force to cover the fairy bone guard. A total of 42 Yen Xian, cross-linked by mistakes, turned into 42 array eyes, unparalleled diffractive force around them, condensed into a party to cover the sky, completely calmed down. The 2 immortal bone guards in the formation were constantly weakened, and the radiant treasure light was disappearing, and finally turned into a puffy powder, and fell into the abyss again. The last 3 obsessions of the entire former court of heaven disappeared. After the obstacles dissipated, the large array disappeared, and the 42 mysterious Yenxian successively fell on the broken square. In front of the 42 Yenxian who had settled down, there was another maverick Yenxian with a mature face and a kind of dignified atmosphere of the superior. Unexpectedly, I searched for several years, and finally found a place to look at the ancient heaven. Looking at the magnificent and silent extreme edge of the front court, there was an excitement and obsession in the eyes of the old Yenxian. A thin, slightly frivolous Yenxian stepped forward and respectfully said, "Congratulations to the Lord for this heavenly fate, and he will surely be able to reach the position of Dianxian." The position of Dianxian. The old face of Yenxian repeated in a low voice, and seemed very satisfied with the flattery. "Now when I come here, if I can get the legacy of the legacy, the position of Dianxian is nothing. Maybe I will be in control even if the emperor is lucky. By then, who can block me from their waist? Who else can I control? Sir is right, I will wait for you to follow my swear." The small and frivolous Yen Xian bent over and smiled. Lao Cheng Yen Xian, who had come back to God, waved his hand, looked at the quiet heaven in front of him, waved his arm, "Go." 43 Daoqiang are in a form of extinction, and the body is surging with great power, showing the tendency of the stars to arch the moon and march into the heaven. All alert me, there must be no failures. Yen Xian, the old-fashioned face, said in a deep voice, and then faced the heavenly palace gate that was more than 1,000 meters high, slowly backed away, letting the rest of Yen Xian walk in the front. In the face of such a look at the ancient heaven, he was also nervous. After all, when he had just dealt with the guardian of the immortal bone, he brought nearly 100 Yen Xian directly to the loss of more than half. If there is any crisis in this heavenly court, it will be extremely bad. The remaining 42 Yen Xian are all elite. He is confident that even if something big horror will happen next, he can escape before these Yen Xian die. With the joint efforts of more than a dozen Yen Xian leaders, the gate of the 10,000 heavenly palace slowly opened. No crisis occurred, as if everything had been silent for countless years. Seeing that, the surrounded old Qing Yen Xian hurriedly pulled the team away, and the eager first rushed in. Looking into the eyes, the dark blue color of the hall is the keynote, just like the ink-painting sky full of artistic conception, full of magnificent momentum. All Yen Xian were shocked and looked at this so-called heavenly palace in disbelief. Even though it has been silent for countless years, heavenly court is heavenly court, and it is not the existence that they can touch. Although they are all Yen Xian, one side of the court is the supreme hub of countless heavens, and only the emperor can control it. Hugh said that even Dian Xian wanted to land in the heavenly court and see the emperor. It was an extravagant hope. Unless the feast of the heavenly court is held once a year, the heavenly court will miss them. Is this the heavenly court? All Yang Xian's eyes were dull, as if at the next moment, the sky edge of directly promoting Dian Xian appeared in front of them. The headed Laoqing Yen Xian performed much better than them, but it was no longer calm, and all eyes were hot. Go! He ordered quietly, and then strode forward in this heavenly court. Compared with the sky outside, the sky inside the heaven is even dimmer. Even Yen Xian, it is difficult to see more than 10 feet away. With a wave of light, a beam of diffractive force was used to illuminate. The head of Laoqing Yen Xian wrinkled slightly. He always felt that something was looking at him in the dark. Shrinked. In the vast expanse of heaven, on the columns of mountains and rivers listed on both sides, weird strange birds are depicted. Invisible, it also puts a pressure on the public Yen Xian. But they only had to go forward daringly, and the immeasurable heaven and earth were waiting for them. Just when Laoqing Yen Xian was nervous to investigate whether there was a crisis in the dark, the wretched Yen Xian beside him subconsciously gasped. "Sir, someone in front." Everyone was horrified, and immediately took a fighting stance. Laoqing Yen Xian looked through the eyes, through the dim faint light beam. I saw in the deepest part of the heavenly court, standing several figures, and in the middle of this figure, there is a huge throne. An unspeakable heavy pressure was surging. Pretend to be a ghost. He clenched his teeth secretly, and then said, "Follow me." 42 diffractive beams of light illuminate, and immediately illuminate the surroundings, as well as the position of the throne, all at a glance. When everything is unobstructed, the air freezes. I saw 4 great men standing on both sides of the throne. Each person has a minimum of 9-foot figure, and the tallest man has more than enough space to go there. And in the middle of these 4 gods' peaks, Yu reads the book www. The Khonshu. On the throne of calm, sits an emperor body in Moyu Luyun costume. Although there is no sound, this scene is very impressive. All Yen Xian held their breath and did not dare to breathe. They are dead or alive. At this moment, even Laoqing Yen Xian was puzzled, and the restless heart was stunned. It should have been dead. They could not survive that war, and no one could survive. He began to persuade himself in his heart. Even if it doesn't die, so many years have passed, it must have been weakened to the extreme. At the next moment, above the magnificent throne, the godless body quietly opened the golden eye. Laoqing Yen Xian took a deep breath and burst out a swearing. "I depend, live." Chapter 4801. I thought it was just an empty shell. At this time, his eyes were opened, and he was almost stunned. His figure was soft and he almost collapsed to the ground. All Yen Xian was startled, and all took a step back, trembling. That kind of existence is no longer what they can imagine, and naturally it can't afford any struggle. As the figure in the emperor's clothes opened his golden eyes, he was surrounded by 4 figures and opened his eyes together. The trend is surging. The air seemed to stagnate. The 4 godlike figures were unsmiling, staring forward. "Sir, let's retreat and leave." Yoshio Yangxian's legs were trembling, and he was already dizzy. In fact, these 4 figures are Qin Qing, Di Qing, Spring and Autumn, and Cui Jing. Even the true body of the emperor who is sitting on the throne and wearing the costume of Muyu Luyun is all unparalleled. The reason for this is actually helpless. Originally, Jian Wushuang planned to directly kill some Yen Xian who had inadvertently broken in, but somebody saw the previous scene as soon as he left the hall gate. Nearly 100 Yen Xian's battles are imposing, even if more than half of the losses are a huge force. In addition to Jian Wushuang's strength recovered to the peak after receiving the perception and inheritance of the 6 Crow Emperor, the strength of the remaining few people has not been fully restored. Jian Wushuang did not count him as his strength was restored to Lu Cheng's unclear conscience. If you play against this team of more than 50 Yen Xian, only a few people with swords can match. Even if it is a victory, it is also a terrible victory, not worth the shot. So he took the initiative to drive these Yen Xian away. But what he didn't think of was that although the group of Yen Xian gallbladders were about to be frightened, they had no idea of escape. Jian Wushuang frowned, secretly glancing at Chen Qing who was standing beside him. Chen Qingdeng immediately grasped the idea, stepped forward, and screamed directly, "Those who break into heaven, die." The sound of Hong Zhong's thunderous explosion thundered Yen Xian's psychological defense. "Adult, if you go back and go, you will all fold here if you don't go." The wretched Yen Xian trembles, apparently intending to walk away regardless of the next. Lao Qing Yen Xian gritted his teeth without saying a word. He was unwilling. After years of hard work and chance, he found the former heaven. Now he is asked to give up. How can he be reconciled? Like Qin Qing, who was condensed by Shen Feng, seeing that they had no plans to leave, he took a step forward and prepared to warn him once. But because of his too big step, he directly pulled the wine gourd hidden in his waist, and even scattered more than 10 pieces of black mountain top crystals on the ground. The sound of a crisp landing sounded, and the wine gourd drew an arc on the jade ground, and the bones rolled to the foot of the old Qing Yenxian. The air suffocated. Lao Qing Yenxian looked down at the newer gourds at his feet, and then looked at the scattered black mountain top crystals, and suddenly he seemed to understand something. "You guys posing?" Chen Qing looked embarrassed and looked at Jian Wushuang. "War." The simple word resounded. Jian Wushuang suddenly stepped up from the throne, and an invisible long sword had already condensed in his hand. "Bring me to death." Lao Qing Yenxian, who had come back to God, exasperated, "No one stays." In an instant, 42 Yen Xian, 42 Yen rushed up, and directly fought with Jian Wushuang and others. Chen Qing directly patted the real sword at the waist, carrying Wan Jun's sword with a bold move forward. Chuanqiu also directly summoned his 8 arms and rushed forward. Cui Jing, the weakest and without the slightest bottom card, was blocked by Chuanqiu. Unlimited. A whisper sounded, and Qingqing also started, and a black raven appeared behind him, croaking. Such a trend directly responds to the 42 Yen Xian's combined efforts. Jing. Sheila. The blade was sharp and unmatched, and directly tore the infinite force. The dark black of Qin Qing, the sword intention of Qin Qing, and the angry eyes of the 8 arms of Spring and Autumn all burst at this moment among the public Yenxian. One sword directly shattered an immortal source of immortals. Jian Wushuang turned around and glanced at the meaning of Qing, and then continued to fight. Even if the strength is only restored to less than 60%, but the terrible belonging to Jiuzhuan Dianxian was still revealed in the first time. The black Wubao phase shattered and shattered the fairy source of 10 Yenxian directly. It was only this time that the confrontation came down, and the 43 Yenxian had dropped by nearly 20. The old Qing Yenxian headed was almost cut off by Jian Wushuang and his sword. Adult and retreat and... This time, the insignificant Yangxian's words were never finished, and he looked at the invisible blade of his chest with his eyes wide open. It was chopped off with a knife, and Wushuang didn't stay at all. His arms held the hilt, and he carried 3,000 swords straight down. The old Cheng Yangxian's horrified eyes were a little full of anger, and then his arms were shocked, and the space around him suddenly changed. At this moment, it seems to reflect a diamond-shaped colorful huameng, magnificent and fierce. At the same time, there is a needle-like awning, which emerged from each diamond-shaped huameng, and all rushed towards Jian Wushuang. Because this is really too fast, Jian Wushuang can't dodge, when even if there are nearly 1,000 rays of refracting huameng, pass through. The indescribable pain of cutting seemed to shatter his consciousness. But these are only blocking Jian Wushuang for a moment. The invisible sword in his hand, because of inertia, finally fell heavily on the shoulder of Lao Cheng Yenxian. With a sneer, a sharp sword, almost splitting him into two. He screamed loudly, the pipa bones on his shoulders shattered directly, and blood spewed out. Jian Wushuang also retreated at the same time, covering her heart. A ray of blood spilled from the corner of her mouth. Since he came to Daanhuan, he had cut off the past, and his ancestral luck and divine power were all returned to the divine universe by him, so he had no so-called fairy source. It is precisely that the most important fairy source without this fairy only let him escape. He has an intuition that the style of becoming an immortal is enough to crush any source of immortals. Old Cheng Yenxian, who was also badly injured, stumbled back, and the dynamism surging around him was dimmed. Perhaps because of the rapid dissipation of Yanli, the face of Lao Cheng Yenxian began to change rapidly. The ordinary face that is quite mature and founder disappears, replaced by a face full of heroism and richness. After seeing that face clearly, Jian Wushuang's eyes were already dignified. That face was no one else. It was the three emperors, Gong Ziyu, who participated in the battle for the peach in the realm of Zhenuyang. But now, his sudden arrival is obviously beyond Jian Wushuang's imagination. As the third emperor under Zhenuyang, how could he appear here at this time? Chapter 4802. After undergoing a change in the northern celestial state, the son of the fifth son of Zhenuyang was killed by Zheng Ying under the hibiscus tree. It is still less than 10 years from now. Presumably there is already chaos in the entire division, and the remaining 6 sons will inevitably be questioned by Zhen Wuyang and will not act lightly. However, at this time, Gong Ziyu is leading Yan Xian to shuttle through the jurisdiction of the big division. Isn't it true that Zhen Wuyang is suspicious? And how did he discover this past heaven? All doubts could not be answered. Looking at the familiar face, Jian Wushuang had no intention of strangling them to death. At this moment, Chen Qing also found the face of Gong Ziyu, and Zhao Jian Wushuang cast a suspicious look. Young Master, you can't die. Jian Wushuang's secret sound line passed into the ears of Chen Qing and others. Chen Qing, Chuanqiu heard the words, and stopped fighting in due course. Originally, I planned to clarify the truth of these 20 or so Yenxian. After hearing Jian Wushuang's words, although I had some unsatisfactory intentions, I still took the momentum of Yanli and let them go. The situation of this great dispute has ceased directly, and the whole heaven has fallen into a strange silence. This kind of destructive situation makes the remaining Yenxian tremble. In these few confrontations, there are only less than 20 Yenxian left. Having stopped the injured young Sun Yu, he has no courage and plan to fight anymore. Now, he just wants to escape from this nightmarish heaven. Let's go! Young Master Yu trembles, and then, with the help of a dozen Yenxian, he quickly left Tianting and disappeared. Looking at the heaven that had fallen into silence again, Jian Wushuang spit out a sigh of breath slowly. The purpose of expelling Gong Ziyu has been achieved. Presumably, he will never step on the ground when he has not grown to a certain point in the future. The reason why he can't kill Gong Ziyu is because he is the third son under Zhenuyang Emperor. Once the accidental killing, I'm afraid that the realm is deep. Yu Bo, who can kill with a palm, will bring someone to kill. Jian Wushuang, who has practiced for millions of years, knows that when the strength is not strong enough, caution is the best policy. Since the 3 of them from the northern celestial state are still in a state of illusion, so naturally they don't have to worry about Gongziyu identifying them. So far, everything has come to an end. From the coma of the northern celestial state, he fell into the unknown heaven, and was captured by the Chui leader of the Sand Demon Cave in the Sand Demon Cave. After several battles, it led to the mysterious and unknown heavenly Buddha realm, and he accidentally fell into this. The former heaven realm has received the inheritance of the godless king. Everything seems to be a fantasy like a dream. Jian Wushuang grew up bit by bit, but he also moved forward involuntarily. He randomly picked a jade order to sit on it and motioned to Qin Qing and others to search quickly. After all, the Six-Crow Emperor has completely fallen. It would be a pity if his collection had been kept in dust. Qin Qing and others all couldn't wait to search, but Di Qing didn't leave, but sat down next to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang didn't ask too much about it. In his opinion, they would soon leave each other. At that time, even if Qin Qing completely occupied this heavenly court, he had no opinion. But the sentence that followed Qin Qing shocked him. "Can I follow you?" Di Qing smiled awkwardly, looking a little embarrassed. Jian Wushuang kept silent, but he knew the ending of Master Emma. Perhaps it was guessing his inner thoughts, and Qing Qing quickly said, "You can rest assured that from now on, with me in, others cannot move your finger." In the end, Jian Wushuang looked at him and said, "Because that's the reason of the Six-Crow Heavenly Emperor." I Ching stunned and finally said, "Yes, not." Jian Wushuang had already understood his thoughts, and then said softly, "I can tell you the words of the Six-Crow Heavenly Emperor, but it will not be now, because I have not yet understood. If you want to stay by my side because of this, then I will get through as soon as possible, and then tell you the wordless word, and then please leave as soon as possible. I don't want to put an irregular crisis around me." After saying the sentence, Jian Wushuang carried his hands on his back and walked out of heaven slowly. Looking at his back, I Ching's eyes showed a strange meaning, and then seemed to be determined in his heart, and quickly followed. "Are you planning to let me be your slave?" Di Qing came to his side and asked. Jian Wushuang glanced at him. "I never had this idea. What's the use of getting a slave? You are approaching me because of the Sixth Emperor Heavenly Emperor. I will naturally give you what you want. Before that, you can choose to stay with me, but there is no relationship between us." After listening to the truth, I couldn't help saying, "But don't you plan to ask for the same benefits?" "Too lazy to ask for it," Jian Wushuang said softly. "I can give it to you, but I hope you know that neither now nor in the future will do anything that is detrimental to me." After listening to the truth, after a moment of silence, he solemnly said, "I understand." Jian Wushuang no longer said much, scanning this dim heaven with his hands on his back. Nearly 3 days later, Qin Qing, Chuanqiu, Cui Jing and other talents ran out of the heavenly court, and everyone's face was filled with joy. Although the heavenly court has been broken and silent, without any avenues of luck, the emperor's collection is still unimaginable. Countless rare treasures, Yenxian methods, countless, and even a copy of the mind of the Sixth Raven Emperor during his lifetime was picked out by Qin Qing, and it was full of the whole ring. Even Cui Jing, who was in a state of sadness from beginning to end, read Audiobook's www. Akanshu. Kam was also a little excited, and changed back to the look of that unruly face. He is just a small ancestor-level master, but after such a big scene, how can he suppress the excitement? Predictably, after collecting such a rich collection of emperors, Chuanqiu and Cui Jing were promoted to Yenxian realm, which was already on the agenda. "Let's go." Jian Wushuang looked back at everyone before leaving the old heavenly court. Through the mysterious vortex, 5 figures stood in the void. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and lowered his strength, closing the corner of the raised void and closing it completely. This former heaven, which should not be exposed anymore, and the final destination is to continue to fall asleep until the years are barren. After doing all of this, everything is gone. He looked at Cui Jing, who was beside him. Cui Jing stepped back half a step subconsciously, his eyes a little bit timid, and he felt an inexplicable pressure when facing Jian Wushuang. Chapter 4803. That kind of pressure, even his elder sister Sha Qing, and those De Yenxian monks who easily destroyed the Sand Demon Cave did not have it. The unspeakable breath, such as Yuanzhu Yuezhi, can't be elusive. Jian Wushuang did not speculate on Cui Jing's mind. He was not disgusted with the last person left in this Sand Devil Cave, who was also covered with cause and effect and mass murder, but he never said he liked it. You are free, you can go where you want to go. Jian Wushuang said softly. Cui Jing was surprised, and a bit of bitterness appeared in his eyes. The Sand Devil Cave was destroyed, and he fell ill again. What place is there for him to live in this vast sky? If he had nowhere to go, but he didn't dare to defy Sword Wushuang, he just stayed where he was. Chuanqiu saw the thoughts in Cui Jing's heart, touched him without trace, and made a wink at him. Cui Jingxin understood the situation and hurriedly looked up at Jian Wushuang. Brother Jian, I can't go anywhere. Can I just follow you? From now on, you will follow. Jian Wushuang heard the words and did not agree with him, just said, after you finish the injury, make plans, and it is too early to say anything. After saying this, Jian Wushuang will no longer drive him away. Cui Jing heard the words, rejoicing in his heart, and hurriedly arched his hands. Thank you, Brother Jian. Finally took a look at this resealed old court. Jian Wushuang turned around, carrying 4 figures, and soon disappeared into the vast void. This time I went to the battle of the North Celestial State, the sun died, and the celestial state of the North Celestial State was destroyed. The celestial bone armor, which was about to be obtained, also disappeared completely. In fact, this time there was a lot of turmoil in Baiyin Xianzhou. From Jian Wushuang and others to Xianzhou, there is the mysterious Dingxiu and Yenxian selling Heishan Dingjing on the street. Then the mysterious 7 swordsmen appeared, completely disrupted, and wanted to put the sun to death in the heavenly hall of Xiaoxianzhou. The most beautiful thing was to make Jian Wushuang unimaginable. Zheng Ying, the beautiful woman he saved during the original voyage, was also at the last moment. Fairy source. It was only within these days that an emperor died. All the killings seemed to be the same, but they also seem to have been planned. Thousands of thoughts. I am afraid that even the real Wuiyang Emperor can hardly find out the complexity of this situation. But the only thing up to now, Jian Wushuang can be sure that Zheng Ying will never be with those 7 swordsmen. She is like a ghost, with a very close purpose. Once she succeeds, she disappears completely without a trace. But if it's really not a gang, it's too coincidental to start working on the sun's ink on the same night. Today, only one of the 7 swordsmen died, that is, the heroic woman dressed as a man, who had hung on the walls of the Sand Devil Cave together, but it has long disappeared. I am afraid that only by finding her can I ask what happened in Baishangxianzhu. The silver bell mother with the sky-shaped bone armor, the heroic woman left by the 7 swordsmen, Zheng Ying who cut off the ink head of the sun. Now these 3 have disappeared, adding a bit of mystery to the already destroyed North Heavenly State. Even if the surface of the water is calm, no one knows what kind of undercurrent is under the surface of the water. When I came, only Qin Qing and Chuanqiu were around me. When I returned, there were more Qing and Cui Jing around me. For the 2 guys who stayed beside him, Jian Wushuang didn't know how to express his position, but could only wait and see. At this time, they are deep in the void, and countless heavenly planes are dotted in the world like stars. However, these are only in Desiyu. For the entire unknown Dayanhuan, it is just a drop in the ocean and unimaginable. After simple thinking, Jian Wushuang decided to return to the 6th heaven realm. In any case, it is also the place where he is currently located, and the place closest to Desiyu to Gaoshanting, and perhaps more ancient secrets can be obtained. Jian Wushuang had already made a decision in his heart. After returning to the 6th-day realm and refinishing, he tried his best to search for the whereabouts of the Silver Bell Mother. Then go to the so-called celestial world of heaven and see if you can resolve your own causation and mass murder. For the unknown heavenly Buddha realm, Jian Wushuang in the Ming and Ming feels that it will never be simple. The 2 great Yenxian in the same air and the silence are too murderous, and there is still the enlightenment of the monk. Perhaps, there should be more monks like empty wheels in the heavenly Buddha realm. Jian Wushuang secretly said in his heart. 5 figures, shuttle through the void, and continue to fly towards the vast void. When he arrived, he shattered the snow on his shoulders, and the world was bold. At the end of the day, there was nothing in both hands, but it seemed like 1,000 pieces, silent and silent. The people who have already achieved the position of Yanxian have evaded all common things, but with the barrel of Qingqing, they are destined to return home and do not know so calm. Cui Jing's eyes lit up before him with all kinds of pleadings, and had the same smell. Eventually, Jian Wushuang was persuaded, then stopped at a plane with plenty of energy and rested to drink. This azimuthal celestial field is vast and has dozens of continental distributions. It can also be regarded as a super-celestial field in this large division. Moreover, Yanxian in the past is not a rare sight. There are Yanxian who still breaks down the red dust. Just like Qingqing, the lower realm is accompanied by wine. But Yanxian is a minority after all, not even the top repair. Going down to Fengtianyu, I randomly found a restaurant on the mainland, and these 5 figures entered it. An altar was aged and served in turn, with more than 100,000 caddies of liquor. Cui Jing, who shares the smell of Qingqing, started to shove wine with each other. Jian Wushuang, holding a pot of exquisite binaural hip flask in one hand, sat against the window and looked deep into the street outside the window, wondering what he was thinking about. Di Qing, who is not interested in these old brews, is secretly looking at the guy sitting opposite. Di Qing always felt that he carried a lot of secrets in his body, but he was very clear and clean, and there was an indescribable contradiction. Take care of him, the 6 crows of Heavenly Emperor have the hand, I will not be too late. Di Qing thought so, and then looked leisurely out the window. He has no idea how many years have been quiet on the hibiscus tree. He is full of curiosity about everything. If it is not bound by the sword, he may not be able to wait for it. He wants to destroy several heavens and have fun. At the time of the people's laziness, there were a lot of streets that had been repaired, and the sky was completely dark. Boom! Several extremely powerful breaths, such as the dark clouds covering the top, dispersed and fell. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.